I'd like to call to order the Reno City Planning Commission Wednesday, September 6th meeting. Welcome. And our first item on the agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. And if you would all join Commissioner Griffith in leading us in the pledge. Thank you very much. Michelle, can I have roll call, please?
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Britton Griffith Douglas.
Present.
Ed Hawkins. Paul Levis.
Here.
John Marshall. Here. Kevin Weisky.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. I do have a general public comment card from Lauren Knox. If anyone else would like to make a comment under general public comment or a subsequent public hearing item, just a reminder to fill out the pink form. And I'll stop there. Lauren, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity. And again, my name is Lauren Knox. I'm with the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency. And some of you may already know who we are, but I'm really here to describe who we are, what we do, and just quickly touch on the regional plan update, which we're pretty excited about. All right, so who are we? We were created by the Nevada legislature in 1989, and we were designed to foster coordination around the use of land and around regional issues of concern, such as air, water quality, and roads. We do this across the county with an emphasis in the most heavily populated areas. And how do we do that? We develop and maintain the comprehensive regional plan, which really coordinates growth across our region and has a 20-year horizon. And all in all, we basically promote collaboration and address growth on a regional level. So why plan regionally? Well, because the impacts of growth really know no boundaries. For example, take me for example, I live in the city of Sparks, I work in the city of Reno, I play in Washoe County. But the need for resources such as roads, water rights, and schools transcend jurisdictional lines. So who do we coordinate with? We work with a variety of regional entities. Our data and analysis have been used by groups such as the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada and the Western Regional Water Commission. So since 2012, we've actually completed 40 collaborative projects, leveraging more than $1 million from regional partners, and we really try to maximize the investment of government dollars. So why am I here today? We have recently launched the public participation portion of the 2017 Regional Plan Update. So our community's changed a lot in terms of economy, demographics, and land uses. We've seen a lot of change. We expect to see more, and we really just want to be prepared. And since the regional plan addresses topics such as population, conservation, and infrastructure, this is really the perfect opportunity to engage and share your thoughts for the future of our region. So there are various ways to engage. I encourage everyone to visit our website. That's plantruckymeadows.org. We're going to be having various newsletters. There's a lot of information on that website. And we also will have a variety of surveys that I encourage everyone to participate. So please tell everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to describe this today.
Thanks so much for being here. Any other public comment for general public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close it. And we'll move on to approval of the minutes, which we do not have any for this week. So we will move on to City Council liaison reports.
Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager. I have no comments from Councilwoman Barkas.
Okay, thank you. And next up in order on our agenda is item 6, public hearings, but we're actually going to move the agenda around a little bit. We're going to move the whole section 7.1, 2, 3, and 4 up on the agenda, and the reason that we're doing that is that all of those items, 7.1 has been withdrawn, and 7.2, 3, and 4, we're going to have a request for continuance on those. So the first item we will hear, I'm not even sure we need to open this, Claudia, item 7.1 LDC. Okay, so that one is withdrawn, 7.1. 7.2 is LDC 17-00061 Meridian 120 South Village 1 and 2. And Claudia.
Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager. That item was not posted, the site was not posted properly. So that one will be going to the October 4th Planning Commission meeting. We are going to renotice completely. We've had a couple continuances on this one, so we want to make sure the public is very aware of when the hearing date is. So to avoid any further confusion, we will fully renotice this item as well as all of the 7.2, 3, and 4.
So do we need a motion on that, or is that just?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. I'm looking at Greg. I don't think we need a notion as it wasn't properly noticed. No.
But you may want to consider, if there's somebody here to make public comment, you may want to consider allowing them to do so if, even though the matter's being postponed.
Okay.
Just a consideration.
And question for legal for clarification, can we do that for the block of items 7.2 through 7.4?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Marshall, did you have a question?
I'm not going to be here on the 4th. I'd like to be here for that item. So I'm wondering if there could be consideration of scheduling it for another, either before or after. Take that
The
into
applicant was
account.
hoping actually for the 20th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, and that agenda is full, as we're all aware, so the October 4th is is an extremely late date for them. So and the applicant's representative just walked in, but I don't think we would want to push it any further than October 4th. And we have missed the posting to put it on the 20th, the same date as Stonegate and the master plan.
Commissioner Gower, I am also not going to be here on the 4th, so we may need to make sure that we will have quorum for that meeting.
Any other issues with October 4th?
Andy, did you want to say anything about that?
Thank you very much. For the record, Andy Durling with Wood Rogers, representing the applicant for Miller Meridian 120 projects. Really deeply apologize for the snafu. It was mine and mine only on the signage issues, and apologize for the time being wasted, both from the commissioners as well as for anybody from the public. And if there is anybody here that has questions on that project, I'm going to step outside. I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. As Claudia said, it is very important that we move forward. We've been delayed a couple times, our mistake, obviously, but would like to move forward as soon as possible, and understanding October 4th is the soonest we'd like to, if feasible, move forward at that time.
Okay, thank you.
If I could, I appreciate the applicant's candor and coming up with why it's continued again. I do think that we have to balance the interests of the applicant with having a full complement of planning commissioners. So I would urge that, to the extent that we have the ability to influence our future calendar, that we take into consideration their request, but it is a request, and that we can schedule it for a time when we have both Chair Gower here and myself. I think that'd be in the best interest of the Planning Commission.
Commissioners, other comments? At this point, I'm going to open public comment, seeing if there is any. Again, if you'd like to make a comment, now's the opportunity to do so on this, recognizing that it will be continued for a later date. And then Mr. Durling did indicate that he's available for questions too outside of the chambers. Seeing nobody rushing forward, I'm going to close the public comment. And with that, I guess we'll just leave it up to staff to either October 4th, or if we can find another meeting date. I mean, I'm with Commissioner Marshall, but understand that, we have a lot on our plate over the next few months.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Weisky.
Is there anything in these three items that requires more than 5 votes to move it forward? Because if all it would take is for between now and October 4th for one other planning commissioner to have a personal item come up or an illness unexpected, to where we have 4 commissioners attending a meeting that night where that would be enough to vote on some issues, but not all issues. And so that would be my question to you and to Claudia.
Yeah, there are no master plan amendments on this, and that's the vote that requires the 2/3 vote, so thank you for bringing that up. So that is not as a part of any of these, so that won't be an issue. As long as we have a standard quorum, we'll be fine.
Claudia, what does our agenda look like? Do you know other items on that October 4th agenda?
October 4th, right now, is fairly busy. It's a little early to tell. Usually cases kind of fall out as they get closer, but it's a solid agenda.
And is it an absolute on the part of the applicant and staff that we're not available to go past that 4th date?
You are legally allowed to go past that, as we have a waiver of time on the tentative map. The text amendment is city initiated, and there is no time limit on a zone change on a map amendment. So legally, you can move forward. We try to accommodate the applicants to get them to a hearing as soon as possible. So staff would recommend that we move to the October 4th date.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to move to the next available date when both Chair Gower and I are present. That would be whatever the next date in October, I assume, to move this item, continue this item to that date. But Claudia, I don't know what is the exact date of that.
That would be, oh, sorry, let me get to the right
the
one.
18th?
That would be the 18th, yes.
The 18th is for the master plan adoption.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry.
So
We
it would have
master
to be
plan adoption
November
that
4th
day. So it would be November 1st.
first, yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, that's for the,
That's the adoption of the master plan is the 18th, so that will be a lengthy discussion and hearing. So you would be pushing them back to November 1st.
I move that we continue the item to November 1st.
Commissioner Marshall, before we get, I have your motion on the floor. I want to get Andy back up here and get his, from the applicant's perspective, understanding that it's been delayed. Obviously, Commissioner Marshall and I would like to be here. From your perspective, is that reasonable to ask that?
It would be very difficult, you know, and we'd be looking at an additional 2-month delay. We were trying to work with staff to get on the 20th of September. That didn't work. October 4th being the next one, and if October 18th is full of the Reimagine Reno, I mean, we're just pushing this out so far. I would just respectfully request that we continue this to October 4th time certain, please.
Okay.
Commissioner Gower, Commissioner Olivas. I guess I understand the desires for everybody to be here, but I think the reality is not everybody can be at every meeting. And I think we need to keep moving the ball forward. I think to delay projects when we do have a quorum isn't warranted, and it just keeps stacking things up further down the line, and nothing will ever get done if we wait for all 7 of us to be at every meeting.
Okay. Appreciate that feedback, Commissioner Olivas. I've got a motion on the floor. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chairman, before I would offer a second on that motion, Claudia, isn't it, I know it's available to council members to call in and participate online. Is it available for planning commissioners to call in and be available for a hearing online?
I would look to the attorneys. We haven't done that before, but for planning commission, I would assume it is an option. Yeah, we would allow that.
Okay, with that information, I will not second the motion then.
With that information, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. So the direction then is to have the October 4th meeting. I was under the impression that we didn't need a motion to do that, but
Correct.
given the circumstances, I'm going to ask for a motion to go to October 4th.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, so moved.
Okay, do I have a second for that? Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, October 4th, it is.
And if anybody is going to be calling in, I would recommend you coordinate with Michelle as soon as possible so she can arrange for that.
Okay. So we'll move back up then on our agenda to the public hearing items and begin with item 6.1. This is case number LDC 18-00001, High Desert Truss and Lumber. And we will begin with a presentation from the applicant's representative. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Gabe Whitler with Odyssey Engineering, representing Erickson Framing NV LLC. The proposed project is High Desert Truss and Lumber Facility. A request for a special use permit to allow outdoor manufacturing within an industrial zone property. You'll also notice in the request non-residential development over an acre within 300 feet of a residentially zoned property. I might add that this is typically handled at the site plan review stage. However, since we're processing a special use permit, we include it all in one application to avoid two different parallel processes. The proposed site is on Parr Boulevard on the south side, right where the railroad crosses Parr, equally between Virginia Street and US 395, just to the southwest of the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. The depiction on the right shows the surrounding zoning. The existing facility, or the proposed facility, excuse me, is located within this elongated parcel here in an industrial zone. Everything to the north is also industrial zoned, an existing park. To the east, you have some mixed use with the Dandini Regional Center overlay zoning. To the south is single family SF4 zoning. There is a sliver parcel between the proposed development and the residential zoning. It's hard to make out at this scale, but there is an industrial buffer there. This is a proposed site layout. Currently, a new facility has been constructed. A building is being built here. So what happens is the applicant constructs trusses on site. They're served via rail for lumber and materials. That's offloaded, outdoor storage, which is also an allowed use and an ongoing process. It's taken inside. They'll construct trusses indoors. That's an allowed use. They've already gone through a site plan review for that permit. So the existing building, indoor manufacturing, outdoor storage is all existing uses permitted and allowed. So the proposed application is just for this area you see here. And what that entails is basically temporary tables. There's no proposed permanent structures with footings or new site improvements proposed with the application. It's simply the outdoor manufacturing use is what the request is. And so it would be located in this area. They'll build the trusses indoors and pre-manufactured wall panels outdoors in this location. And then the product is loaded on trucks and shipped to the site. The existing access comes off of Parr Boulevard via easements through the adjacent parcel. There's also a lease portion to their development that's they lease from the railroad. You can't tell when you're on site where that line actually starts and stops, but it's kind of a mixed use parcel, and it's been that way for a number of years. This is an aerial image of the site. Again, you can see industrial uses to the north. Facing north, this is pretty much just a solid concrete wall. It's the back of some industrial buildings. To the east, you have a contractor with outdoor storage and equipment storage, and they also do some maintenance. This is Amador Stage Lines. They park their buses and maintain their buses on this location here. To the south, again, this is the little strip of property that's industrial zone buffer, and then this is all residentially zoned. You could see Sarava Court and Thistledown Court to the south are the existing developed residential properties. This is an image taken, obviously, Given the use to the north and the east, the sensitive area for outdoor manufacturing in this location would be the properties to the south, the residentially zoned properties. So what we did was conducted a full mock-up test of what the outdoor manufacturing would operate like. And so we had a full crew come on and make as much noise as they could to simulate an actual process that would be occurring on a day-to-day basis. And so that included a full crew with hammers, nail guns, generators, air compressors, skill saws, radios, forklifts, everything they would need on a day-to-day basis so we could get a worst case sample. And then sound tests were conducted in 2 locations adjacent to the residential properties. In addition to that, a 24-hour ambient sound test was done the day prior to, just to get a feel for what the ambient sound is in the neighborhood. So here you can see that outdoor storage has already taken place. The indoor manufacturing building is under construction at that time. This was June 20th. So the site is kind of in disarray because it's still under construction, but you can see how the outdoor manufacturing would operate, and it gives you an idea for how the outdoor storage would lay out. Now, this is a 9-acre piece in total. As you can see here, the proposed outdoor manufacturing use and indoor manufacturing would be limited about the easterly third. This dash line here depicts the farthest west they can go based on fire coverage for their farthest fire hydrant. So obviously with wood outdoor storage, they can only go as far as the fire hose will allow. So that's kind of the limits based on what they can do for the fire department. In discussions with staff through the process, they felt more comfortable that we specifically identify that area, and so a legal description has been included depicting and describing the area of the proposed use, so that you come out 2 years later and they're over here doing outdoor manufacturing. So that's been specifically identified in the application via legal description. So again, this gives you kind of the overall picture of the area, using about the easterly third of the property, and you see the location to the residential use to the south. This is just gives you a closer picture of how the site is accessed. There's the access easements along this driveway for their main access. Again, they do have a lease with the railroad, so they can use this facility as well, but obviously the railroad parcel isn't part of their application, so the outdoor manufacturing is just limited to the property on the south. This gives you kind of an oblique view during the day of the test. You can see that it's about 300 feet to the nearest future developed residential lot. You can kind of see the limits of where construction is currently. It's about 550 feet to the nearest house. But what you also have is about 100 feet of vertical. There's about 90 feet between the proposed site. This is where the mock test was run and where the outdoor manufacturing will occur. And there's a little over 100, 120, maybe to the between this house and the location. So the extra vertical gives you a little bit of sound attenuation as well. You can see the indoor facility was under construction at the time. This display represents kind of some of the surrounding single-family residential zoning and how that might be affected. The red dash line is what's referred to as test site 2 in the sound study. The actual monitor was located right here at the cul-de-sac. Sound test 1 was right here at the end of this cul-de-sac behind these future lots. And so that gives you a radius idea of how the results of that test might affect other properties. And the different hatching here denote this aqua crosshatch is a residentially zoned piece, but given the terrain and the odd shape of the parcel, it really is undevelopable. The green crosshatch is a common area open space that was mapped with this subdivision tract map. And so that too will not be developed. And then the red dashed, or I'm sorry, the yellow hatching represents potential future residential development. So, so the results of the sound test done at the location of the proposed outdoor manufacturing, it should be representative of potential future impacts on residential development that has yet to occur. This is a topographic display, just to give you an idea of the vertical relief. You can also see right along the south side of the property, there's an old cut slope from when this property was developed. And then Ferrari McLeod has cut up the side of the hill, and then it just gives you an idea of there are 90 and 120 feet of vertical between the proposed site and existing development. This is a historic use display. There were several others in the application, just to give you an idea that how this parcel has functioned over the years. Typically, it's been served by rail, transferred as truck, and then shipped locally. So this is a summary from the sound study. This table 1 on the left summarized the ambient noise levels, and that was located up on the top of the hill by the residential development. And so that in code, the threshold that we're looking for is 65 decibels is typically the max. This is an average, and this would be a max during these hours. So there's a 24-hour study. You see that the averages are all existing below the 65, but there are multiple times when that 65 is exceeded as a peak during those hours. And it was typically noise from 395 and airplane noise and local street noise that occurred in the area, as well as some of the other existing uses, land uses. Table 2 represents the sound study during the mock test. So it was run at 6 o'clock, 6 a.m., 9 a.m., and 3 p.m., and they ran at 5-minute intervals just to get a better sample. And so you'll see at Site 1 and Site 2 are the two locations at the top of the hill next to the residential area. The averages are well below 65, and none of the maxes exceeded the 65. The morning one did come close, and I believe that was an airplane, if I recall. So all the tests during the mock did not exceed the 65 decibel limit. This is Table 3 represents the sound study, so at the site. So right at the facility, obviously you're seeing skill saws, air compressors, that sort of thing are exceeding the max. And with that information, they're able to interpolate and give you an idea of the noise levels at 100 feet from the processing facility, and then 200 feet. And so you see how that once you get to 100 feet, which is from where the manufacturing will occur to the first technical residentially zoned property, which is that area that's undevelopable, you're already below the threshold. And they calculated that the average distance would be about 72 feet is where you need to get to be below the code threshold. This is a picture of the mock test. Again, there's Site 1 and Site 2 is where the monitoring devices are and where the 24-hour ambient test was done. So you can just see the type of equipment they were using and making noise. These are the equipment they used to monitor it. This is up at the test site looking down on the facility. You'll notice that because of the relief in the terrain, there's actually kind of a natural screening effect that occurs. The actual outdoor manufacturing portion will be kind of tucked up under below the existing topography. This is another looking kind of northeast. Their Phase 1 under construction. Looking directly down at it, the mock test is right down here. Again, it's fairly well screened. And then this is looking, the other test locations right here, and again, looking down at the site. So that's kind of the general nuts and bolts of the application. I might add that this is a use that's pretty critical to our construction industry at the time being. Right now, a lot of this is provided out of town and shipped over the hill, so it'd be nice to have a local facility and local employees to be able to provide this kind of manufacturing for the local developers. With that said, we've worked with staff through the process to come up with the conditions of approval, and we're on board for the most part. I'd like to have a little discussion with you about condition 5 and condition 6. Condition 5 is currently the time restriction. It's proposed 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. In this type of trade, in this type of application, 6 a.m. is a pretty standard starting time for them. Now, this application for the outdoor manufacturing is limited to daylight hours only. There's no proposed lighting facilities, nothing beyond daylight hours. But limiting to 7 to 7 in some times during the year will be a little restrictive for them. And so if 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. feels like a more comfortable time for the applicant during conditions that would allow that to summertime when you have a little more light available to you. And most times it'll be limited by the actual daylight, and that'll be more restrictive, but that just gives them a little more flexibility in their operations. And then in relation to condition 6, which is pertains to landscape screening, we just feel that that's something, it's already a code requirement, so that when you come in for building permit, that's already a requirement as part of plan review and permitting process. It feels a little bit redundant, and I'm afraid that it may get confusing down the road for future development or plan review as it may be. With that, I'll let staff do their presentation, and then we'll have a discussion.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Kyle, I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman, Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner for the record. Gabe did a really good overview of the project details and what the actual request is actually for an SUP, special use permit, to establish a new outdoor manufacturing, processing, assembling, and or fabrication use within the industrial zone. So just a little bit of history on this site. So as Gabe had stated, it was once a part of the railroad right-of-way at some point, and I'm not really sure when it was purchased privately. The use that was established in last year in 2016 was the most recent data we had on this site, and it was originally established as an outdoor storage facility. Since then, they came in with a request to build an indoor manufacturing facility, which is the building that is currently under construction out on the site. And what triggered that site plan review was the residentially zoned property within 300 feet of the site. That was approved in April of 2017. All the code requirements and such were analyzed at that point for the site. Obviously, since then, they've come in with a new proposal. The outdoor manufacturing use requires a special use permit by Title 18 requirements. So that being said, a couple of key points I wanted to hit here on this project, specifically condition number 4, the area So that's a site map that identifies the legal area, extent of the outdoor manufacturing and outdoor storage facility. Staff felt it was appropriate to limit this based on the current fire hydrant location. That is a private fire hydrant that was installed with during the site plan review process, or was approved during the site plan review process. So this is the limit of their, I guess, outdoor storage area where they can keep combustible materials as far as fire goes. Not only that, as you saw with a higher scale map, this property over here is all zoned residentially, or it's all residentially zoned. And so staff felt it was appropriate, being that the sound study that Gabe presented was taken from this point at the back of the existing residences and not necessarily over here where future residences potentially could be, that it was appropriate to limit that outdoor manufacturing area to where they actually proposed, or where they studied the sound from. So, so those are the two reasons why this condition was added. Also, as Gabe mentioned, condition number 5, staff felt it was appropriate to limit the hours of operation from Sunday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and no outdoor manufacturing to occur on Sunday. Again, the reason for that condition was based on potential land uses of the residentially zoned property. There could be potential future residential development to the south. Also, to obviously protect the existing residences to the south off of Ferrari McLeod Boulevard. So, and staff did receive a written comment from a nearby neighbor that also had recommended that the hours of operation be limited. He specifically said that the current use doesn't really bother him, but the potential for future outdoor manufacturing uses could affect all the residential property of the south should it expand or be louder, more employees, what have you. So that was another reason staff recommended that condition. That being said, this went to the Ward 4 NAB, and they were in general support, although again, there was a question regarding the hours of operation, and they specifically stated that it should be limited to daytime hours, which again, you know, daytime hours fluctuate. So staff felt that the 7 p.m. Hours, or ending hours, was a good time to stop those operations. With that being said, staff can make all the applicable findings with the proposed conditions, and we're recommending approval of this request. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you both very much for those comprehensive presentations. At this point, I am going to ask for disclosures. Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have visited the site and read the email from one local resident.
Commissioner Hawkins, as did I.
Commissioner Griffith, I have reviewed the same email that staff commented on.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower, I saw the email, read the email.
Commissioner Johnson read the email and visited the site.
A quick question, legal, is that something we disclose, that we read emails sent to everybody? I read the email. That's it. And I've been by the site, but not for any particular reason.
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site and read the email.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a public hearing item. At this point, I'm going to open the public comment portion of the item. Commissioner Griffith, did you want to say something before we get to public comment? Okay. So public comment, again, if you want to make a comment, step forward, seeing none. Going to close it, bring it back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Johnson.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Commissioner Johnson, Kyle, quick question for you. Just as a point of clarification in the conditions, both condition 4 and condition 7 reference exhibit D for the extents. Am I correct in reading that's actually exhibit E in the package that we have? I just want to make sure there's a continuity between what is presented and what's approved. It appears that item D is the sound study, and okay, attachment. I take that back, Kyle. I had the numbers wrong. Never mind.
Okay, I was just gonna say I have it as D, so.
It's exhibit D.
There is a lot of attachment.
6.1E exhibit D, so sorry about that. Okay.
Mr. Marshall?
Kyle, thanks for the staff summary. I'm trying to reconcile a couple things that seem inconsistent, but I'm not positive. So particularly for access, traffic, and circulation, it seems to indicate that most of the project is shipped via rail on page 6, and I think the applicant's representative indicate that it would be trucked out. Is that accurate?
It's my understanding, for the record, Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner, it's my understanding that it's a combination of both, but the majority of it is shipped rail. If you'd like to ask the applicant to clarify that.
I'm just wondering if it's in fact, there's an element that's shipped by truck, do we need to do any analysis on the increase in truck traffic associated with that? Because it seemed to indicate here that it was minimal, and so there wouldn't be any truck traffic, or maybe the increase is minimal because there already is an existing level of truck traffic. So if maybe the applicant is the person to answer the
Yeah, or
question.
maybe our engineering staff would like to add to that as
Okay.
well. I don't know.
I can jump in as the planning manager, Claudia Hansen. So on the analysis of that, this is especially just meant for the outdoor manufacturing portion of it. They already have trucks going in and out because of the indoor portion of it. This will increase it slightly, but we're really looking at the manufacturing portion of it for the special use permit.
Well, I assume for the special use portion of it, we also are including the compatibility with all the compatibility findings. That's why we're worried about noise. And so if we're seeing a significant increase in truck traffic, I think at least that should be disclosed over what is occurring with the indoor facility.
Yeah, I would have Gabe come up and address that to clarify the difference.
Gabe Whitler. So the bulk of the raw material is delivered via rail, so it comes in bundled lumber from out of town, assembled on site, and then loaded onto a truck and shipped across town to the project site. And in our preliminary review, there wasn't enough to trigger what is typically required for a full traffic study. The increase as a result of just the outdoor manufacturing portion is going to be fairly insignificant in relation to the existing truss facility that's already in the works. And part of the reason I put all those historic use displays in the application was just to show that through the years, this full 9 acres has been used as rail to truck transport. So, the easterly third that they're using currently it should be significantly lower than historically what has happened here. And throughout the years, it has been vacant at times too. It hasn't been constantly used, but and again, they do have 2 points of access. They have the easements that cross the neighboring property, and they also have the lease area with the railroad. So they have kind of two ways in and out to the facility.
Is there anything in the record that demonstrates that we don't, the increase in truck traffic is insignificant, that we don't have to worry about additional noise? Was there some analysis that indicated that it doesn't either trip the requirement? I mean, so we have something to base this finding on? Because I can't base it right now on the fact that it's all shipped by rail.
Yeah, I'm just looking for what we included in the application.
I assume you must be increasing some amount of truck traffic, otherwise you wouldn't be
Sure.
having, seeking the outdoor facility.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking through.
Got it.
Yeah. As far as if we actually had a number breakdown for you is what I'm looking for. Sewer traffic. So for 20,000 square feet of manufacturing, based on typical traffic analysis, that would result in 15 peak hour trips and 76 total daily trips.
So you currently have 8,000? Is that what the current building is? Or am I misremembered?
This is just the breakdown for the outdoor manufacturing portion. The existing.
Pick up on
the existing
suggestion that it wasn't a significant increase because you already have truck traffic associated with the existing manufacturing facility.
Correct. And I'm looking for a square footage breakdown of the existing.
You know, you want to
Hi.
jump in?
Yeah, Janelle Thomas, Senior Civil Engineer for the record. And just for the record, the average trips, the average daily trips and the peak hour trips do not warrant additional study based upon our code. So for a full-blown traffic impact study, you would have to have 200 peak hour trips. For infill developments, 50 peak hour trips for just for the driveway entrance study to be performed. And so at this point, it just doesn't rise to that level
Right, no, I
where it's
understand
going
that.
to have a significant impact to the development.
I understand that. So that's getting at the point of, are you adding additional traffic to roadways, et cetera, that you need to do that traffic analysis? This is more of a concern regarding the special use findings and the compatibility with the neighborhood. And
Well,
are
and
you
I don't-
increasing additional, is there any sort of, that's particularly what the staff report was relying on, the rail shipments to say that there wasn't any incompatibility there. Is this fellow commissioners, is this a wacky idea, or do we need to have something that says the additional trucks aren't gonna cause an incompatibility with noise from 75 additional trucks a day?
Mr. Chairman,
Is that-
since we're in question, can we get back to point of order and just stay on questions and then bring it back for discussion?
Thank you, Commissioner Weisky. I was going to get there with my response to Commissioner Marshall. I was going to ask you if you've got the preliminary answer that you were looking for in the delta change of the trips versus where we're at now.
So it looks like we're looking at additional around 75 daily truck trips over what's there now, and we don't know what's there now unless we go off of the 8,000 facility, or existing, I think it's an 8,000 square foot facility.
Well, and I would, I'll make a statement and then I'll let Gabe correct me if I'm incorrect. But my impression is that the truck traffic associated with the outdoor manufacturing was contemplated during their acoustical study period, in which they had all of the equipment and all of the aspects of noise that could be created during that acoustical study. So I believe that that has been addressed. But I also believe that the number of truck trips associated with that are going to be very minimal in the whole grand scheme of things.
That was my next question, and maybe Gabe, it's Gabe, right? I'm sorry,
Correct,
we haven't met yet. This is an area where there's lots of truck traffic, right? I mean, isn't it a shipping area? And so we're not looking, another way we could base this on is we're not looking at a substantial increase in the number of total truck trips in the general vicinity.
Correct, and that was what I was trying to get at with just the breakdown of what the proposed manufacturing area is. And if you look at that in relation to the daily trips on Park Boulevard, you you find it fairly insignificant. Now, what I didn't provide was a breakdown of the existing facility, which is 8,000 square foot indoor, but also the current allowed use is all that outdoor storage, which, comes with a significant amount of traffic as well, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Marshall, we'll get to the discussion part when we get there. Other questions for staff? Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Get back up again. If you could have that overlay put up there with your ambient noise rings, the red and the blue rings.
Thank you.
Right there. Can you show me where the residence is on the northeastern portion of that slide?
Gabe Whitler. Right here is on Sarava Court is the closest by horizontal measurement residence. And this was the location of one of the sound tests, Site 2, as it's referenced in the sound study.
So what would that do to your acoustic analysis if that red rings right into that little lot?
Well, I showed the red dash line just to give you an idea of how it might impact. So we didn't put a monitor here and here and over here, but we have a test here, and so just to give you an idea of a radius around the location of the actual noise being generated, you should expect similar noise levels at around this dashed line. That's what I was trying to depict there, just to show you that this is developable residentially zoned property. This is the limits of what our test will give you an idea of what that sound's going to be like. And then this area is the undevelopable area just because of slope, and it's not the configuration and the type of street that this is. You couldn't develop this residentially. So it just gives you an idea of, okay, here's a test. We know what the sound levels are. Here's a radius of what that sound may appear.
One last question. We haven't written it down, I don't think, in any conditions, but I'm concerned about 75 trucks idling on the property while they're having trusses loaded on there.
Well, I might defer to the applicant is here, and he'd probably give you a better idea of their real day-to-day operations. 75 is a calculation out of a trip generation manual based on a square footage of use. Maybe he can speak to the real technical daily operations of what. I think if you can see from some of these images is probably a better representation of what you might see on a day-to-day basis, where you have one truck at a time. They load a house worth of panels and he's gone that morning.
Yeah, that was a daily, not max at one time figure. So 75 a day.
Sorry, Rich Gallagher, applicant. Yeah, our total fleet of trucks at our largest production facility down in Chandler is 8, and idling at any one point in time is 2 to 3. So they're generally somewhere in the delivery process, and then by the time they come back, they'll be reloading to the extent that there's nothing for them to deliver. They don't idle. Those trucks are just turned off.
And if I can jump in right quick, Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager, there are idling laws by Washoe County Health. We used to condition that, and we've stopped doing that because it is covered by Washoe County.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions?
Mr. Chairman, please.
Commissioner West.
Gabe, can you, you had an aerial, I believe it was, showing the area allowed or proposed for your outdoor fabrication area?
The site plan?
The site plan,
with the aerial?
that's a good one. That's fine. The site, if you'll go back to the site plan,
Okay.
it's probably most accurate. Have you been given any restrictions as far as square footage of area for the manufacturing area, and in pallet manufacturing and pallet storage, the fire department or the city has in the past given or dedicated maximum areas of usage. Do you have, is that a part of anything? Because I don't see it in my staff report.
So, Gabe Whitler, this is the last site hydrant here, and what the fire department allows you is a 400-foot radius around that for their combustible material storage. So if there's a hydrant and they have a pumper truck, that's as far as you're going to get for good coverage for them. And so that's what we based the legal description on that staff has included in their report and approval, is based on this maximum distance they could go for the fire department. So they
Okay.
couldn't store anything out.
So if things go well for the applicant and three tables are not enough for them, they could expand to the west as long as they don't exceed that radius for the reach of fire, correct?
Yes,
They could
correct.
go to 6
Yeah.
or 9
And
or
that-
12 tables
Correct.
if the economy dictates it and they need it,
Yeah,
correct?
technically, the way this approval is crafted, yeah.
Okay. And then then the applicant would start encroaching into the area to the west that is residentially zoned, that is developable, correct?
Correct. If you were to take this radius and
Move it
take the
west.
radius point and move it west, potentially, yes, if they were doing outdoor manufacturing here at the limits, it would affect, something
Okay.
like this.
Well, my concern is not for what is being shown, it's for what could happen in the future. And I hope that they are busy enough that they have to quadruple the size of their operation, because that's good for everybody, in my opinion, personal opinion. But it doesn't protect the neighbors from sound. And so what do you have, or what has the applicant discussed and proposed for sound mitigation should they have the need to grow to the west?
We discussed, I think through the site plan review process, it's come up, and in some of our staff level discussions about if you were to screen some of these areas. And in most of those conversations, it was generally in this area where you have a lot of vertical relief, which you do down here as well. But if someone were to develop up to the property line with residential and they were to expand their manufacturing down here, don't believe we got into any detail about what that screening would look like at that time.
Okay.
But we did, in discussions of, if you were to try and screen at this point at the property line, you can't see it. So if you were to erect a fence at the property line here, it's down a hill. It really doesn't do anything visually or for sound for that matter, unless it was maybe a 50-foot tall wall or something.
Right.
So that
Okay.
was kind of the extent of screening discussions, I believe.
Okay, thank you, Gabe. Kyle, can I get you back up to the podium, please? Kyle, is there any consideration for allowable area for this construction to take place before it would exceed or start to encroach sound-wise into the residential property that I call to the west? I mean, is there a way of limiting it?
Kyle Chisholm, assistant planner for the record. I honestly don't think so, just because of the natural topography of the site. For one, even the residential that's undeveloped to the west has a significant slope. You have setback requirements. And then there's a buffer parcel in between too. That's industrial zone. Hence why we're not talking about residential adjacency per se, because the site isn't adjacent. But based on the numbers that they provided, which is the best guess at this point of what the actual sound might portray from their manufacturing. And based on the radiuses that they showed and the decibel levels from those radiuses, it just didn't, it didn't seem like it would have an impact under the current. Now, could the use become louder? Could they have more employees? That's definitely a possibility. But like Gabe said, unless we were to require a wall that's 25, 30 feet in height, which would, I mean, you know, be an eyesore in staff's opinion, and may not even do the trick. That's really the only other mitigation measure that we would have.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the commissioners? Discussion? Who'd like to start us off on discussion? Commissioner Marshall?
Well, actually, I think Commissioner Weiske's point is a better one, or of more concern to me than, I just wanted to make sure there was something in the record that we could say that we've made our findings based on the whole impact of allowing an open-air manufacturing facility. I also think that the probably ongoing construction of the panels probably generates more noise than a truck does, so I'm not too worried about that. But I am concerned that I for one assumed that the construction location was limited to that, circumscribed to that hashed, or that there's a dotted line around the tables. Is that accurate? Because it seemed to indicate in response to Commissioner Weiske's question that it was not, but.
For the record, Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner. Commissioner Weisky was correct in his assumption that it does not, the way it's written right now in that condition, does not specifically limit it to these black outlined, which is their wall panel, forget what they called it, where they actually manufacture the walls. The limit would be per that legal description. Which is shown here, and that takes into consideration the actual limit of the outdoor storage and outdoor manufacturing area based on the current fire hydrant location. So this would be their actual area that they could potentially operate.
Well, it has the potential to do two things. One, it increase the amount of noise generated because you have the potential to expand the number of tables, and it shifts the location closer to that adjacent lot with residential potential. So those I have some concerns about.
So Commissioner Marshall and Commissioner Weisky, are you leaning towards or suggesting that we limit the area where this potential activity could occur under this approval, and then subsequent approval would be required for a future expansion? Is that where you're going?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, that's exactly where I was headed with that, in that I believe under this application, the applicant should be limited to the work areas shown before us in the aerial and where the tests were generated from. And if their outdoor business were to expand beyond 3 tables or the area that is shown in the aerial in the black rectangles, then an additional application should be made, and sound study or in my mind, I have a sound wall, not necessarily a sound wall, but it could be a wall that's no more than 10 feet high with an angled roof on it that's maybe 4 or 5 feet high that just buffers the sound and pushes it back to the north over the industrial area, and then you move the tables in as close to that as possible. So any reflection of sound heads north. it doesn't head south to the residential areas. That's a minimal amount of expense to grow that as big as you want within that hatched area. And that, I believe, would keep it within the constraints of what the noise study did today off of the areas that they are proposing, and then enlarging those areas of work would give an opportunity for the applicant to show that his growth is considerate of the neighbors and the residential that he's butting up against. That's my thought process and my suggestion.
Commissioner Gower, I'll respond to that. I can follow along with that thought process, and I'm on board with that. Saying that, the one thing that did come up in the applicant's presentation was the hours of operation. There was a suggestion that condition 5 be modified for an earlier start time. If we look at a condensed footprint that takes into account the noise and potential for future expansion, what is the commission's feeling on changing that condition or keeping that condition? 6 versus 7.
Commissioner Weisky, I'll respond to that one first. I think it should be very similar to what we put onto all of our residential construction projects. The 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, is standard that goes with most of our projects. Saturdays are the ones that end at 6 p.m., giving the neighbors, because it's residentially adjacent to, and Saturday evening and all day Sunday of peace and quiet from construction, because basically this outdoor manufacturing facility is now going to be 6 days a week, construction noise continuous. And you know, as it was pointed out over the last 12 months or so by several developers, as you move into the neighborhood, you're the one that adjusts your operation to the existing conditions, and we have existing houses here. So adjust your operation to that condition within reasonableness. It's an industrial area. People moved in next door to an industrial area at the same time. That's for us to consider and to weigh the values of the two. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. I think one of the issues that came up, at least when I was reading the staff report in response to that, was that there was, although it's not a condition, there's a limitation that there's no exterior lighting in this area. And I think that was going to be one of my questions, that if there was a discussion about any change in the hours, that I would want to see a discussion about the specific prohibition of exterior lighting, because I think that's what would allow, you know, the extension of hours. And as was discussed, I mean, there's daylight hours that are, you know, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the middle of the summer, and you know, allowing that is not reasonable. So I would be on board with the 7 to 7. Any change to that, I would want to consider some lighting. But I do want to just tag on to one of the comments that you made about, Commissioner Weisky, about what's here versus what's, you know, existing. It's almost, that was the opposite argument of what you were making in terms of limiting how far they could grow, because the idea of prohibiting the expansion to the west based on what is zoned and potentially going to be occupied is not currently. And looking at the site from my visit there, I mean, that's, you know, it's immediately adjacent to a rail yard, it's immediately adjacent to an industrial yard. So I am less inclined to, you know, necessarily limit above and beyond what's already in here. Granted, they can expand to the south, but I'm looking more at the, you know, what are we looking at from an existing standpoint? We've addressed the sound mitigation to the existing property. There is some concern about additional noise, but if we start limiting them moving to the south because of potential future development in an area that is challenging to develop, both by what it's zoned against and the geography, I'm less in favor of that as an option as I am to the actual holding of the time frame. I think we've addressed some of the residential adjacency concerns by limiting the timing of the project.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to Commissioner Johnson real quick?
Please.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner Johnson, and to be honest with you, until the applicant's representative asked for the hours to be kind of opened up, almost sunrise to sunset, I wasn't concerned about that additional noise, but I started thinking about sunrise at 5:22 a.m. and sunset at 9 o'clock plus, and that's when I started questioning in my mind about the expansion. Actually, I'm not as concerned with the outside noise because city staff will get called, code enforcement will go out, run their meters, and then they'll lose their, or at least put their SUP in jeopardy for exceeding the sound. So I think an adjustment of hours, and I'm make the findings and vote in favor of this.
Commissioner Olivas.
Commissioner Olivas, to Commissioner Johnson's comment about possibly moving this, I agree with you that people are, the rail yard exists and the outside storage exists, but the sound study was from the center of the project, not from the edge of the project to the southwest. And that's where the circles were, and that's what they were using to convince us that the study and the noise isn't that bad on the residences. Had that same circle been at the edge of the property to the southwest, I would go along much more with what you're saying. I think that needs to be confined to what they've presented to us today with their sound study, rather than letting it expand further to the edge. And then to Commissioner Weiske's comments as far as the hours, I was thinking the same thing about the construction, and I think that needs to be limited more in line with the construction hours that we allow. But one thing that I'm kind of wrangling with is a construction project has a definitive end. This will not. It'll be construction as long as this business exists. So I'm kind of struggling with that a little bit as to when we normally have construction and a development, there's an end and people are aware of the development or the vacant land at the time, but this is a permanent situation.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yeah, to me, it kind of begs the question why we're here or why this matters before us, because it's a special use, because it's external or outside manufacturing. They didn't need to come to us to build their truss plant because it's indoors. So it just went through whatever the lower level of review is here. So what they're asking for is a special use permit to operate and do construction outside. So I think the issues that we're talking about, and particularly Commissioner Weiske's suggestion of limiting it to that area under this approval, with understanding that if they want to expand, they can come back and establish, whatever's the appropriate noise mitigation. And if they want to put the whole thing inside, then they don't have to talk to us at all, I understand. So I guess I would, given that we're here allowing a special use, which requires these particular findings for residential, and we have a residential area nearby and compatibility findings, I'm in support of those limitations on the existing, sticking with the existing condition 5 for hours and adding in the conditions for limiting it to that envelope that they indicate.
Okay. There's no further discussion. I'll ask for a motion.
Actually, Mr. Chair, can I ask one more question? I realize we did not address the second concern that the applicant had raised about condition number 6. I guess I'm maybe either looking to Kyle or to Claudia for a clarification. The applicant indicated that what was conditioned there is actually also part of code. If I can get a little clarification in terms of, if that is the case, is this, Kyle, is this condition required?
For the record, Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner. The reason staff decided to add that condition in, and yes, Gabe is correct, it is a code requirement. The reason staff added that condition in is because they kind of wanted free reign of where they wanted their parking area to be, being that this is a completely asphalted site. Staff felt that was appropriate as previous comments during our staff applicant meetings from staff regarding that parking lot edge were not addressed. They did not add it to the plan, so staff felt that it was appropriate to have the condition to make sure that it gets done.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. Commissioner Marshall,
I can make a motion if that's what you'd like to
I'm
do.
ready.
I'd like to move, or based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permits with the conditions as written, including a condition that the outdoor manufacturing facilities be limited to the area indicated in the noise study.
Mr. Chairman, what about hours of construction, Commissioner Marshall?
I am open to, the current hours are 7 to 7, Monday through Saturday. If the commission is interested in changing those, I won't oppose that.
But you're making the motion.
I'm making a motion, so if you, I would not be opposed to a friendly amendment, if you want to suggest something on that.
Commissioner Weisky, you had mentioned 6 o'clock on Saturday.
Yeah, I would like to ask that Saturdays be 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., the same as we use for residential construction.
Okay. Commissioner Marshall, do you want to include that?
I accept that
Okay.
amendment.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Weisky, I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good luck for the project. Thank you. Moving on to item 6.1, 6.2, excuse me, LDC 17-00070 CVS, 1250 West 7th Street. We'll welcome the applicant's representative for a presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, John Krompatik with KLS Planning representing the applicant and the property owner. We have two of them this evening. Also, Sev Carlson with Camphor Kroll Law Firm is with me representing the property owner. And Beverly Mativia is here this evening. She is with the developer of the site for CVS. I have a memo I'd like to share with the commission. I have some suggested conditions of approval. And I'd also like to note that just in the interest of time, not because how long the last hearing took, but because of we have really one issue. We're in very good standing with the staff report as written. I think Jeff, as you know, does a very thorough job. But this really boils down to, on behalf of the applicant and the property owner separately, the freestanding sign issue. And so they have hired Sev and myself to make our best case to save this sign as a freestanding pylon sign as it is today. How do you want to handle those for you? What if we just pass these down?
John, do you have something to put on the overhead? for that,
One of those,
Up to you if you want to put it on the overhead or not.
actually, I didn't keep one for myself, so I'd appreciate if I could have one more. I was going to go through the PowerPoint and then get into so there's site, there is the site as it is today. Everybody's pretty familiar with that CVS at the corner of Elgin on the west, 7th Street, and Keystone just to the east. Proposed site plan is there today. It's a much smaller footprint than what exists. Obviously, that's kind of where we're going in society. You see smaller footprints with the exception of big box Walmarts, but there's another story there. And then a remainder parcel for a future development. This is part of the intent of the developer and CVS as their deal with the developer. CC zone, so a couple years ago, The owner of this property secured a zone change from NC to CC. Part of the intent was because of what they wanted to do with signing and what our code allows by right in the CC zone. In terms of some more project detail, there's the elevation facing 7th Street, the north elevation, east elevation facing Keystone, south elevation facing I-80. It's not direct I-80. There's probably close to 1,000 feet between, but generally what one would see. And then, of course, the west elevation. CVS in its current state, I think part of the discussion has to be a site that's approaching a blighted condition today. There's no landscaping. We have elements of graffiti. We have a building that's dilapidated and closed down for 2 years to the south, which is the bowling alley. It's not a good feeling site. There is the nearest residential you see in zoning. It's CC zone and NC zone where that duplex is on the other side of Elgin, corner of Elgin and 6th, but it is currently a duplex on that property. A little more perspective on the site in its current state. There is the view from I-80, not very interesting. I think this is one of the greatest opportunities I think we have in the community here is because it's so visible from I-80 both directions, but particularly westbound just by the way the geometry of the freeway there. It just sort of lights up in front of you as you look up there sitting on the hill. All of that goes away with landscaping and with a nice building, and then what now serves as, you see the back of the building, 2-story retaining wall will be done with series of rock walls and, of course, terrace landscaping. Graffiti on the rear elevation of the building. Again, I think that has kind of a blighted feel, so nothing but improvement from that point of view. So the issue is there's the wall signs. Generally, wall signs are pretty straightforward on a small retail deal like this. We have no issue with meeting the code as written. We're proposing something less, and staff was agreeable to wall signing as proposed. Let me take that back. I have actually honored the staff request on the west elevation on another image where they have requested or suggested we don't have a wall sign on that west elevation. There's this kind of a signing guide. So here's really the issue today. This all came to clarity to me last night when we had a conference call with the property owner, Sev, myself, and he said, we did vast due diligence on this property for a long time. We investigated the code thoroughly. We found out the CC zone, when you're on an arterial street with 35-mile-per-hour speed limit, allows you so much signed copy area. And you double the signed copy area if you're on an arterial street. That's directly from the code. And he proposes, so you look at the frontage, the key kind of criteria is the CC zone, the frontage, and the arterial street that is 35 miles per hour. That equates to about 400 square feet of copy area with one pylon sign on that frontage. So he does this deal, okay, understanding, not suggesting anybody's right or wrong here, understanding that there is one frontage. I'm going to parcel the site. I'm going to have a future development site that has to stand on its own relative to every section of code, parking, landscaping, setbacks, coverage, et cetera, height, architectural articulation horizontally, vertically, all of the stuff. Comes in with CVS on this site, does what is typical in the industry, reciprocal access easement, right? We have a central point of access, which is exactly what you want on an arterial street, and a single point of access on Elgin. There's a back scratching mechanism in the REA between the two properties, and then at some point down the road, the future property, the future parcel would develop. With that, fundamental to that is that you would have one pylon sign on the street, which is at the current location there toward the northeast corner. important to the location of the sign at the northeast corner. That's kind of the commercial orientation, very close to the intersection of Keystone and 7th Street. And so to get to that sign, so what we're requesting is, in our calculations from our code person and from this applicant, 400 square foot of sign area for a freestanding sign allowed on 7th Street. We have proposed, I think, 82 or 83 square feet. Also, a 25-foot tall sign, which is allowed by the CC zone. What we're asking for is a replacement to the existing sign with essentially no increase in copy area and a sign that is more compatible with the architecture. Sign in more detail. I wanted to touch on this, but because I think it relates to where staff was going about the reference to off-premise signs. I have not done a lot of shopping centers in my career, but I've done several, and I was involved in this one. And it's kind of key to the point about there is no off-premise anything here with parcelization of the property and doing a reciprocal easement agreement. Sometimes it includes parking. In this case, it doesn't, because we don't know what the parking is going to be on the other side. But here's Canyon Center. You look at all of the parcels there, you know, central point of access as you would expect for a major shopping center, individual APNs, tax parcels, and reciprocal easements for access, parking, and then a pylon sign that serves several of the tenants. Similar, here's one, and I only had two. You could go all over town. It's a typical way of developing a shopping center. But we have Meadows Marketplace. I happen to be involved in this, so just by way of my involvement and understanding of it, I thought it would be a good example. A freestanding sign, multiple tenants, there's 6 or 7 on there, it looks like, at the corner, and then parceled off, again, with reciprocal easements. So to get into really, I think the issue is, at least if I'm understanding staff's point of view, was, and I'd like to drill down on finding G, which is about project signage. And I'm going to read it and then pick it apart so I can understand why we think we have a reasonable case for saving that sign. Project signage is in character with the project architecture and is compatible with or complementary to surrounding uses. So the point being, there's really, in my mind, there's 2 pieces there. Project signage is in character with the project architecture. This owner and this applicant have directed their sign professional and their architect to design the sign and the building with some level of compatibility, with character in mind. So the key point, central point to all of this is that if we're taking a sign that's been there for 40 years, that just is what it is, trying to place it with something equal in height and in size and copy area dimension that is more in keeping with the project architecture, then it supports the finding more so than leaving the sign as it is today. The other piece of this is compatible with or complementary to surrounding uses. And, you know, this is sitting at the stop bar at the first thing you come to when you're getting off the freeway, going to go north. If you're going to go to the CVS, you come to this stop sign or this stop traffic signal, and you see the Jiffy Lube sign as the first kind of major sign. I wouldn't suggest that's a thing of any beauty, but it is key to the finding about compatibility and complementary to surrounding uses. That is foremost in surrounding uses. It's right, you can see the CVS sign directly behind it at a slant. Here's Jiffy Lube in a little more detail, and again, CVS. And this is just what you see when you drive, when you're at that stop location at freeway off-ramp. Jiffy Lube again, just showing that. And there's the current CVS sign. So if I could go through these conditions, and there's one that wasn't related to sign, I was, if the commission could entertain this number 8, where I discussed it with Mr. Borkhardt. And what we asked for is just so, because I heard this from the executives of CVS, Ms. Nativia is with me, and their whole team in the last couple days about making sure there's no downtime. So we thought this was a real innocent request just to say, if you could allow the pharmacy trailer to be moved upon completion of the new pharmacy building and within 2 weeks of issuing the certificate occupancy, so that they have a little bit of transition without having to fold up their shop. That's the idea there.
John, do you want to put that on the overhead so everybody can
Sure.
see it?
Hard to read my green writing there. So then the other ones, 14, 15, 16, all relate to the freestanding sign. 14, the key change is the second sentence is the applicant will be allowed a sign on the west elevation after completion of and occupancy of a building on the adjacent parcel with shopping center. It's a compromised position. The code allows a sign. Staff says, you know what, you have a vacant parcel there. I think they make a fair point. Even though it's all commercial zoning, there is a multifamily property there. So if we had eventually a commercial property there, there would be something intervening between the CVS and the residential property. And so at that point, allowing for the west elevation signing. 15, of course, is the key issue. And what we're asking for there is 83 square feet. It's 83, no magic other than that's what the sign person proposed. And that is what CVS was okay with on the 2-tenant freestanding sign. And then the other part of that, of course, is the 25 feet. As it sits today, it's right close to 25 feet. And then the 16, condition number 16 we talked about, we don't agree with the issue of any reference to off-premise, but staff, again, to show them the respect here, what we thought about was amending the language, keeping the condition, and saying we can deal with this by showing a reciprocal easement agreement which governs the coordinated operation of certain shopping center elements such as common driveways, drive aisles, landscaping, and a shared freestanding sign. So I think I will leave it at, did I burn up 15 minutes? Geez, that seemed, so I'll leave it at that for now, commissioners, and be here for any questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jeff Borkhardt, Associate Planner for the record. So I wanted to highlight what is triggering the special use permit. It is the hours of operation at this point that is triggering the special use permit. The operation between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Normally, this site would just require a site plan review because of the proximity to residential zoned property. They're within 300 feet. Much like the prior item before you, that got brought in to run concurrently, so that is also under review with the special use permit. So we have proximity to residential and also the hours of operation at this point. So staff is generally supportive of the site being redeveloped. We welcome the redevelopment. The overall site meets various different code requirements, and we're excited to see landscaping be brought back, better architecture on the site. So overall, it's an improvement to the site. So as John mentioned, the multifamily residential use located to the west is in a neighborhood commercial zone. We felt that a lot of the standards that govern the proximity to residential within our code should be applicable to this because of how close it is to existing residential uses, whether they're in a commercial zone or not. And so condition number 14 will ensure that no wall signs will face the residence. the applicant has proposed a condition amendment that says that after a building is built, staff would be open to such a condition amendment if the condition amendment read that the applicant will be allowed a sign on the west elevation only after completion and occupancy of a non-residential building on the adjacent parcel within the shopping center. Because that gets to the intent of what we're trying to achieve at this point. There would be no sign at this current point because there's nothing intervening between the buildings. With regards to the other sign, staff doesn't believe the proposed sign is consistent with the surrounding signs and scale of development. So, well, John showed you a few other signs, which I also printed out. Let me show you a couple signs that are also in the neighborhood as well. So this is the one right across the street for Rayleigh's. Much smaller in scale, much more compatible with the neighborhood style development that we see, given that these commercial uses are clustered right around this intersection, but in almost every direction around this is single-family residential or multifamily, small-scale multifamily residential properties. Here's the Starbucks, right on the other side of the Jiffy Lube on Keystone, on the west side of Keystone, which was also required to have a smaller sign. Here's a smaller scale sign right down the street next to the Pizza Hut. And just to bring a smaller scale sign, which we wouldn't necessarily prefer, but also still a smaller scale sign. So one of the things that we are trying to do as a staff is get more towards monument style signs. Not only are they more architecturally compatible with buildings, they overall look better and less dated than signage. So from an architectural standpoint, we believe that monument signs are more architecturally compatible with what the proposed building is. We're also trying to get towards smaller scale signs to be oriented towards pedestrians. There are a couple different master plan policies, SD2 and SD3, which kind of geared towards creating more compatible signage with smaller scale development. And in addition to that, we believe that finding G, our proposed condition supports finding G in terms of reducing the height of the sign. So what I tried to do is, rather than limiting it to 6 to 8 feet in height, I tried to find what a good middle ground would be with some of the surrounding signs in the area. So that's why I chose 12 feet in order to find that in that middle spot. So let's see real quick. I think that really gets to what we discussed. With regards to Mr. Kompotik's proposed conditions, staff is okay with condition number 8. And we're open to discussion on condition number 16's amendments. So the NAB was very supportive of the project, and that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions should you have any. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Before we get to any public comments, I'm going to ask the commissioners for disclosures. Commissioner Olivas, we'll start with you.
I visited the site.
None.
Okay.
Commissioner Johnson visited the site.
Commissioner Gower, no disclosures.
I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Hawkins, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Weisky, I visited the site.
Okay. Thank you. At this point, I'll open public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment cards?
Not for this item.
Okay. And seeing no one rushing forward, I'm going to close it, bring it back to the commission for questions. Would like to start us off?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a technical question? Before us, we have a request for an SUP one, to construct a drugstore with a drive-through pharmacy and a temporary pharmacy trailer within 300 feet of a residentially zoned property. And two, allow hours of operation between 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. That's what is before us on an SUP. My technical question is that where we should stay focused in our questions and discussion? Or do we go out into the other conditions, such as signage, and decide for the applicant and staff to how the conditions should be written and accepted as what's being proposed to us, I guess? I mean, I looked at this and I see two items before us. I don't see signage. That's why I would like some advice from staff or legal on how to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Staff or legal? Can we get an answer?
I'll go. Jeff Borkhardt, Associate Planner for the record. So when we consider this, we are considering how signage is viewed from a project totality. When we are looking at compatibility with residential and things like that, that is one of the items that we are taking a look at. And so finding G does have us look at whether or not signage is compatible with a specific development. And so that's sort of one of the aspects that we're looking at when we're considering this.
This is Greg Salter, Deputy City Attorney. There's also a change in the size of the building and the nature of the building, and so finding G becomes very relevant in determining whether, under the new configuration, the project signage is in character with the project architecture.
Thank you for that advice.
Commissioner Weisky, did that answer your question?
About as good as it's going to get, I guess.
Can I offer another perspective on that question? And maybe the way that I look at that is it's almost like the first one that our first item is that the reason why it's before us is the triggers, the 24 hours operation within 300 feet. Once it's before us, it's all before us. I don't think we can separate out those issues related to what triggered in the first place. Is that
Okay.
do I have that right?
With
Or
that-
if I have that wrong, then
Well, I don't know. I'm not advising. I'm just a commissioner. I don't make advice. That's a bad decision. Go ahead, Claudia, if you want to jump in. Otherwise, I'm ready to ask a question.
Sure. So we would recommend that you focus your discussion and findings towards what is triggering the special use permit. If it's 24 hours operation and you look at the overall project and they decide to close at 11, then that removes your review of any other portion of the project. So you really do need to focus on what that trigger is and why the project is before you, and that would be how you're considering the findings.
Commissioner Weisky, question?
Thank you. Jeff, welcome. So can you tell me then regarding signage, not the direction that the city is headed in or what staff would like, but what is currently allowed for this proposed development on this street today if there was not a building and not a sign existing? So it's just a flat piece of dirt. A developer comes in, wants to build this building on this property. What sign is allowed there?
So without having the sign code in front of me, I wouldn't be able to tell you whether a monument sign is allowed or a freestanding sign is allowed with without a building.
Well, with,
I
mean,
don't
it's-
think it would be allowed without a building, but say for example,
With the building, I
Yeah,
mean, they're
say-
gonna build a building there and put a sign up in front of it.
Okay.
Okay?
So with that, it would be allowed, say for example, it didn't have any sort of discretionary review through a special use permit. We weren't considering finding G in this
Right.
case. They would be allowed a 25-foot tall sign based on the street and the speed limit. And they would also be, I think Mr. Krompotnik was correct in terms of the square footage.
Okay.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I believe it's 400 square feet. I believe our planning manager has the code in front of her. Oh, yes, that is correct.
Okay. So what the applicant is asking for is the maximum allowed height and the maximum allowed square footage for this location.
Based on the condition amendment, they would be asking for the maximum allowed height, but not the maximum allowed square footage.
Okay, just height. All right. My next question then would be for Mr. Krompotnik, John. Part of your handout, and I can show you the page out of my staff report. You can put it up on the overhead if you want. It shows the existing dual pole sign and then the proposed single pole sign before it.
Yeah.
And you say that sign matches architecturally to the building.
Yes. Commissioner
Okay.
Weisky, yeah.
Now, the elevations that you showed us of the new proposed building has a lot of wood architectural features on it. I don't see that on this sign. So where's the match?
General color, texture.
So with a little mirror here or a little mirror there, it's kind
I
of
would-
almost.
I would be willing to make that happen, believe me, if you wanted to, and I realize where the city is going with signs.
Okay.
But I think if there was something that the commission wanted to make this more architecturally compatible, we would have a team of designers ready to make that happen.
Well, I guess what I'm considering in bringing up for discussion with my fellow commissioners is a consideration of the sign as it's proposed, maybe 5 feet less in height because you're already going to be over the other signs, height of the signs of the area. As we saw from the Rayleigh's sign, we saw from the Starbucks sign, all the newer or the newest constructed signs or modified signs are all down much lower.
Completely different conditions. They don't have 450 feet of, remember, and the big rub here is, with this owner, was the investment decision based on a code that says you get this. And I'm just talking.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But you're also asking for something later, so.
No, that's right.
Be real careful what the owners.
Of course, and I respect that, and you know that. But what I'm saying, by the way, it's about 17% of what the code allows in copy areas, so we're not being aggressive that way. Are asking for the 25-foot height, but the code, Mr. Borkott echoed what I said, because I had to be careful to not overstate this. 400 square feet of copy area, 83 square feet proposed. We were simply trying to match the copy area and enhance compatibility. Mr. Weisky, I respect his opinion in a big way. He doesn't think it's very compatible. I think we can work on that.
It's a line of sight and where you're picking people up from, and I agree with you, and I like the signage location on the east side of the building. I like the signage to the west side of the building. I like it to the north side of the building. The west side, I liked your elevation showing no signage because those people live there. They know what's in their backyard. They don't need anybody's initials flashing in their windows or down their street at
No
night.
flashing sign proposed.
I understand it's not flashing, and thank you for catching that word. I said it on purpose. Thank
Also,
you.
that sign does serve, I mean, you know, it's all about line of sight. That's a one-story property. I went and toured it. You can't, 6-foot fence, you can't see a thing. But it is, with all due respect, it's a multifamily property, sits there 300 feet away from.
That's why
this
the
property.
proposed building to the west is going to take out the site of any signage
exactly
in
right.
due time anyways. So the west side really isn't a point of discussion. I have one other question, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be done. John, I'm not sure if you're representing the applicant for any other items, or is it just the signage?
No, the SUP.
For the SUP
Yeah,
total?
sorry if I didn't open up the.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Where is the truck loading area on the building?
In the back.
I thought the drive aisle went all the way around the building. Starts on the north, comes around the west, and ends up on the south where the drive-through window
Well,
is.
now that I think about it, I think they have one truck per week.
Okay.
CVS. It's a drop in the bucket. I mean, one truck per week. I went through this on another CVS, and we realized that we don't have a loading zone. Yeah, that's what I recall, and because of the lack of frequency and that it's a panel truck or a semi, they do it at a particular time, don't disrupt drive-through traffic or, I mean, the operation has their own agenda in dealing with that, where they're not going to disrupt their own operation, right?
Okay. Thank you.
You
Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Jeff, I'm curious to, since we're on that topic, I'm curious to get staff's perspective on Commissioner Weiske's question about the loading zone.
So with respect to the loading zone, our code does not trigger a loading zone requirement for the size of the building as it's currently proposed. So we do not require one.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for John. Going back to Commissioner Weiske's initial comment about the 24-hour use, is the drive-through intended to be 24-hour use?
You know what, I have to say that it's going to, I've heard behind the scenes that they're not going to open it for 24 hours unless there's a lot of business. But I don't want to suggest that to the commission. We're asking for 24 hours.
So that would include 24 hours for the drive-through?
If you could come up to the microphone, we
please,
can't hear you back there.
Yep.
Beverly Mativia, she's with Armstrong Properties Development. They're the developer for CVS.
Commissioners, thank you. As currently planned, CVS would open using the current hours that they already have, because that's what customers demand at this point. They're just asking for the flexibility, should customer requirements in the future require additional hours to serve them, that they be allowed to do that. Typically, the drive-through is open fewer hours than the interior pharmacy is. It's very, very rare for a drive-through to ever be open 24 hours.
And so the interior pharmacy, though, would be part of the 24-hour use?
Possibly. I can't speak for CVS's, operations department. It would depend upon customer requirements.
Right.
What would best serve customers. Sometimes pharmacies are open the exact hours of the building. Sometimes they're open fewer.
Okay. And perhaps this is a question maybe for Jeff. The 24-hour use, does that extend during the time that it's the temporary trailer on site?
That actually, I didn't contemplate that. I mean, as it's supposed to be a temporary use. However, if you're entitling the land, I mean, I guess you could, but I did not contemplate that. So if the commission were to add a condition for that, staff would be supportive of something that says that it could not be open 24 hours, that it would have to follow the city's hours of operation.
Okay.
just for the record, I don't believe CVS has had any consideration of having that temporary trailer open 24 hours.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, no further questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Can I follow up with a question? As it's written in the staff report, if we make a motion to approve it with everything that's in the staff report, what are we approving hour-wise? Are we approving 24-hour use of the building, the drive-through, and the trailer?
As of right now, to Commissioner Johnson's question, yes, the way that this is worded, staff would be open to adding a condition restricting the drive-through hours of operation because they didn't have the same considerations that the rest of the project did. In the case of the drive-through and the permanent drive-through and the permanent building, those would be subject to the hours of operation 24 hours.
Okay, so regardless of how CVS is planning to operate initially, they would have the ability to go all the way to 24-hour use with this approval, subject to potential conditions that we talk about a few minutes from now.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's what the intent behind the special use permit request is.
Okay, thank you. Jeff, I have another question since you're up there related to that trailer. It talks about pharmacy use. And when I was reading through that, I was trying to visualize in this trailer taking a whole CVS that includes things that I'm assuming are outside of a pharmacy use, and you're just focusing on certain items. Is that assumption correct, that pharmacy uses relate to specific products or services?
It is my understanding, and the applicant may jump in to address this, that the trailer would be solely for the purpose of pharmacy. They have dedicated customer base that has prescriptions that would take, it would be an issue for them to try to transfer their prescriptions to another CVS location. And so the goal is to, while the project is under construction, to have some sort of temporary pharmacy so people don't have to be inconvenienced in terms of relocating their prescriptions to other locations. The retail component, from my understanding, will wait until the new store is updated.
Okay, so the trailer specifically does not include a retail component?
That is my understanding, and the applicant may address that specific question.
Jeff, I just want to know from the city's perspective if we're allowing it to include retail or not.
So a pharmacy use is a retail use. And so in our mind, it's one and the same. So if they had retail there, it would be the same thing. It's licensed under the same aspects of our code from a use standpoint. So from planning staff standpoint, we reviewed it as if it were a retail operation.
So pharmacy includes retail and retail includes pharmacy?
Correct.
So why call it a pharmacy?
Well, I wanted to be specific. I didn't say retail because they weren't planning on doing retail from what my initial stuff was.
Okay.
But
CVS uses this particular trailer all over the country when they're reconstructing buildings, and it is strictly used for pharmacy use. From CVS's customer perspective, the pharmacy customer is the single most important that they have to maintain. If they lose that one, typically if somebody goes to a Walgreens or something and relocates their prescriptions, they don't come back. So their concern is to keep the pharmacy use. The trailer it won't have Kleenex, magazines, snacks. It might have something that's related to prescriptions, syringes or alcohol prep pads or something, but typically it is strictly for the pharmacy use.
So that's where I was going with that question is you've got your pharmacy use, the actual prescription pharmaceuticals, and then you've got all these over-the-counter products that one typically expects to find in a pharmacy. Are those going to be included in the trailer or not?
I don't know how much, you're talking like cough syrup and Sudafed and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I do not know how much of that they carry. I do know every discussion I've had with them, it has been restricted to, it's for pharmaceuticals because they don't want people to take their prescriptions elsewhere.
Thank you. Commissioners, other questions? Commissioner Olivas?
I guess I don't know if this is for Mr. Krompotnik, but just kind of elaborating on what you're going at. I kind of envision this to be more like a Don's Pharmacy, where there is some retail element of that, but it's all in support of the drugs
On the new CVS?
on the temporary trailer.
I don't know that operation very well. I've been focused on the new CVS. I'd like Beverly to make sure she's clear on that.
Beverly Batavia with Armstrong Development again. As far as I'm aware, it's strictly for pharmaceuticals. There may be some support. I know that pharmacies typically carry syringes, alcohol prep pads, bandages, some things that are attendant to prescriptions and the things you would get from behind the pharmacy. I do not know how much they might keep of other. I know it's a very limited size, so there's no room there for much of anything in addition to the pharmacy.
Excuse me, I was just trying to give the commission a comparison frame of reference for a similar sized local pharmacy.
Yeah, it's very, very restricted. My understanding is, anyway, in my discussions with CVS, to just the pharmacy.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Discussion items? I would say, this is Commissioner Gower, I'm intrigued where Commissioner Weisky started the discussion in asking staff and legal counsel about the scope of our discussion and what triggered the special use permit. Personally, I'm not 100% clear on the answer that we received and what my focus was. And I can tell you that when I reviewed the staff report, and when I review every staff report that comes before me, when I have findings to make, regardless of what triggered the special use permit, what's included in the staff report is the information that I review, and that's what I make my decision based upon. If there's something in the staff report that makes me question whether I can make a finding regardless of what triggered the special use permit, I'm going to ask questions and I'm going to be concerned about making that finding. So for me, there's a finding in there related to signage, and I'm concerned about whether I can make that finding. I'd be curious to hear the feedback from the other commissioners.
Commissioner Johnson, I guess I'll weigh in on that. I agree with what you're saying, but I also struggle with the fact that as Commissioner Weisky's questioning started from, the property that we're looking at here, the thing that's triggering us to look at it is essentially a 24-hour operation, which the response to my question was that at this time, it's not even scheduled to be a 24-hour operation. So it's one of those where they could have come in with the proposed project and the proposed sign through code and site plan review due to adjacency and reached the situation where they could have gotten the building and the signage without the 24-hour use, and then perhaps had to come back for a special use permit, at which time we'd be, not looking at the sign. That said, I think going back to your comment about making the findings, the staff report has written it in a way that limits the signage to the point that allows me to make the findings. The question at hand is whether we want to accept the proposed changes to the staff report as part of our approval. It's not the other way around. We're not reconditioning what's there. We have a staff report in front of us that limits it to a monument sign, 12 feet tall, and no signage on the west side of the building. If that's what we need to make the findings, then we don't have to change anything. We just have to push the recommended changes aside. So based on that, I think that's where our discussion goes is, are these acceptable based on still being able to make the findings? If not, that's just a request from the applicant above and beyond what was already presented to us in the staff report.
Can I jump
And Claudia, I think, wanted to weigh in on my comment.
Thank you, Claudia Hanson, Planning Manager. Just a reminder, before you tonight are two special use permits, one for proximity to residentially zoned property and one for hours of operation. You could talk all night long about what they could do, what they could apply for, but tonight before you are those two special use permits and the associated findings. That's what you should be focused on.
Thank you for that, Claudia, because that's exactly where I was going with the discussion, is that that's what we're looking at here, and we have a staff report to that effect.
And Commissioner Olivas, and to expand on that, we are supposed to focus on those things, but one of the findings is related to signs. So I'd have a difficult time ignoring the sign package.
Commissioner Marshall?
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. I think we're here because the applicant elected to seek 24-hour, the ability to operate 24 hours. And that then triggered the special use permit requirements under a couple different criteria, and that triggers all the findings that we have to make. And this is an opportunity for good planning, and it's in my mind, it provides an opportunity to implement some pretty critical, at least I think, master planning goals about consistency of signage and how you design signage and the look and feel that the city wants. So it's an opportunity to make those, not only to have the sign come more into conformance with what we want to do, even though they could have chosen a different path to maintain the sign, they chose an alternate path. So I'm in favor of the staff conditions regarding the sign.
Commissioner Leisky?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can make the findings for the 24-hour use. I can make the request, I can make the findings for the drive-through pharmacy at the temporary location. As far as the signage goes, I would like to ask that we consider conditioning the sign to at least be a monument sign. I ask that we also consider policy and ordinance of what is in place, not what is being proposed, because it may or may not ever take place. It may not be that when we relook at, when we agree to what Reimagine Reno is. I applaud staff, and I am grateful for them talking to the applicants and explaining to them the direction that we're going and what we would really like to see. And if they want to be a good neighbor and they want to design and build for our future and the future that we're headed to, then they would design to it. And obviously, I don't see that in this case. But by law, exactly what I asked Jeff, they're proposing that that's what they are allowed to build at. And I would have a hard time going against what is allowed by code today, no matter what could happen in 2 months from now or a month from now. And again, I applaud staff for going to the applicant, and the applicant has chosen not to listen.
Claudia?
I just want to clarify, as Jeff mentioned earlier in his presentation, that there are existing policies in the current master plan, not in Reimagine Reno, that do support the smaller scale of the sign. Specifically SD3, that signs should be designed as an element of the building they advertise and be of appropriate scale to the building and surrounding neighborhood. So that is a policy that is being carried forward, but it is currently in the master plan. It is also in Reimagine Reno, but it is in the currently adopted master plan.
Claudia, thanks for clarifying that. That helps me a lot right now.
And to connect that even further to finding B in our findings, substantial conformance with the master plan, that's the current master plan. Appreciate that as well. Commissioners, other discussion? Anyone like to venture with a motion?
I'm sorry. Well, I can do that, but also can I just ask that if we had a slight word change on condition H, should I mention that now? Just instead of move, condition 8 says that the second sentence, that the pharmacy trailer shall be moved upon completion. Can we make that removed? Just to make it clear that it's not moving on the site, but to be removed from the site. Just a small little.
Commissioner Gower, I think that's good clarification.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Greg Salter with the City Attorney's Office, suggesting that the additional language to condition number 16, you do not have the authority to impose because you are being asked to change our off-premises sign code and some of the definitions in it. So if you decide to retain number 16 as being relevant to your triggering events, my recommendation is that you do not adopt the additional language that was suggested by the applicant.
Okay. Claudia?
Sure, thank you. So in the past, we do look at an on-premise sign as one that is located on the site. And if you look at the definition of site, that can include a number of parcels. And I think it's development site or project site. But that can include multiple parcels that function as one commercial center. So we can relate it back to that definition in code if you choose to go that way, to show it as one project site.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, Claudia, can you just to confirm that, there was a question from the applicant and concern that if they parceled this off into two properties, that they wouldn't be allowed to advertise them both on the same sign. What you're saying is this condition does not preclude that from happening, provided that there is additional, is there any, based on what you said, is there any modification needed to condition 16 so that doesn't get us into the legal issues that were brought up from the applicant's recommendation?
Yes, I think the concept behind their proposed wording on 16 is fine. I think the wording is not correct, the way it's been worded.
Okay.
But we can come up with something that considers it as one project site to allow for multi-tenant sign. And it would not meet the off-prem advertising definition.
In addition, to that, if we want to get more specific, the way that the condition is existing now is it would allow us to continue to work with the applicant to determine what is considered an off-premise sign or not.
Okay. I think from just understanding where the concern in the comments that came in, as long as staff is clear on the wording of that, should the commission go down that route, that we're supportive of multiple tenants on that overall parcel being on the same sign, that you can adjust or not adjust this in conjunction with discussions with the applicant. Is that, are you able to do that based on the direction that we give without us having to give you specific language?
Correct.
Okay.
It would be more beneficial to have some direction added through specific language so that there's not any loss of clarity should this entitlement drag out a little bit longer from the permitting phase.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Jeff.
Can I make a motion?
You ready to do so, Commissioner Marshall?
So based upon compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions with the following amendments. Condition number 8, second sentence shall read, the pharmacy trailer shall be removed from the site upon completion of the new pharmacy building and within 2 weeks of issuing the certificate of occupancy of the new building. Condition 14, to be amended. Claudia, do I need to read that, or we can just say off the memo? I mean, you all are supportive of the language for 14. Did I get that right?
We were fine with 14 if you added a non-residential building.
Yes.
So just add in occupancy of a non-residential building.
Okay.
In case an apartment building went in next door, because that isn't allowed use in this zone.
Okay. And that's it.
So no specific language, Commissioner Marshall, to 16?
No. But because I think it allows, there's flexibility there that allows them to continue working to satisfy the conditions so that the monument sign would not be considered an off-premises sign for the second undeveloped site.
So question to staff, is that sufficient direction within that, what Commissioner Marshall just said, the direction in knowing the desire of the commission and the motion for staff to fine tune that condition?
I think one thing that I would be looking for is whether or not the planning commission believes that this is considered a single shopping center development, or if this is a single development and the other site would be an afterthought. That's the discussion that needs to be had.
I don't think so. I think that depends on how the other site is developed and its connections with this site, which we don't have before us. So I'm not certain how we make that determination. I think I would prefer to, and Claudia, this is what I thought I heard you say, is that you would continue to work with, the sign's gonna be the sign, and whether or not you include advertising for the other lot would depend on how it's integrated so that it can meet the necessary findings to have it serve as advertising for the undeveloped lot.
Mr. Chairman, before that question gets answered, can I ask a question of the applicant's representative real quick?
Sure.
John, we're talking about one lot here, correct?
That's correct.
It is not subdivided, it's not parcelized, it's not anything. It is one piece of property, correct?
We do have a condition for a parcel map to create the two parcels that you saw.
Okay,
Yeah.
so one of the conditions is that you have to parcelize.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
If I can jump in, I actually think you could probably delete condition 16 altogether. They can't have an off-prem sign on the site anyway. So I would say they just need to meet code.
I would therefore add to my motion that we delete condition 16.
Okay, got a motion. How about a second?
Mr. Chairman, can I ask for a clarification from Commissioner Marshall on his motion, please? Is there any change being proposed in your motion to condition number 15? Or are you going with staff's recommendation for condition 15 or the applicant's recommendation for 15?
Staff's recommendation for condition 15.
Okay. In that case, I'll second the motion.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Commissioner Hawkins? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. Moving on to item 6.3, which is case number LDC 18-00005 Clockwork Pizza. Commissioner Weisky, do you have a disclosure on this item before we get rolling?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to disclose that my employer is working with the property owner, currently has a bid in on site improvements related to this project, and therefore I will be recusing myself from this agenda item.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. At this point, I will hand it over to the applicant's representative for a presentation. Welcome.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Kathleen McPhail. We are proposing a family pizza restaurant and bar called Clockwork Pizza Loft. We are requesting a special use permit, 24 hours, to target the service workers in the area,
If you could just pull that microphone down a little bit there. Appreciate it, thanks.
a nightclub for light dinner music, and a bar to contain 9 slot machines. That's on the opposite side of the dining area.
Hello, my name is Jacob Estes. I'm representing Ace Architects Incorporated. And I can answer any questions about the building or the site. Also, we have discussed the conditions from the staff report with the owner, and he is fully intending to proceed with all of the requirements. and also to more beautify this site. It is an eyesore. It's been vacant for many, many years in this neighborhood, and he intends to do all the requirements set forth by the Community Development Department, and his intent is also to add more tenants that would also make the business more viable.
Okay. Nathan, we'll get staff's perspective. Welcome.
Thank you.
Haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you again.
Thank you. Get the PowerPoint up, please. Well, good evening. For the record, Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. And as the applicants had indicated, this is a request for special use permits to allow a bar use, a nightclub use for live entertainment restricted to karaoke and one single entertainer, and 24-hour operations on Thursday through Saturday nights. The site's located in a community commercial zoning designation. There's community commercial to the north, south, and west of the 2-acre subject site with existing commercial development. About 375 feet to the east is an existing multifamily development. The existing building is a former grocery store built in 1975. It's been vacant for about 10 years. The project would utilize about 12%, 3,600 square feet of the available building area in the portion of the building furthest to the west. Facade renovations would include new glazing for the subject suite only and new paint for the entire building. That's what this review is related to. However, the applicant has indicated future plans for the overall center development. Key conditions, just to clarify, when we send a notice out for a nightclub use, that's any live entertainment. That could be spoken word poetry. If it occurs more than 2 times a month, it's live entertainment, it's considered a nightclub. So we recommend conditions 5 through 9, which would clarify the intent of the nightclub use and restrict it to karaoke and single entertainer use only, which would be a performer with backing tracks on the house system. We recommend double doors for sound containment, a security plan, and cameras to prevent loitering. One of the key concerns with the extended hours of operation would be any noise in the late evening hours or early morning hours. So key to the approval of a security plan and cameras would be to prevent loitering and noise from occurring. And the restaurant would open 24/7. This is primarily a restaurant with alcohol use, which would be allowed by right. However, with the distinction of the bar, would be that patrons could also sit at the bar, order directly from a server. Site improvements addressed through condition 10 through 16 include new paint and glazing, address existing code issues, graffiti, weeds, the abandoned sign on site, parking lot improvements, parking lot lighting, and total site landscaping would be required with the tenant improvement. Staff can make the applicable findings and recommends approval with the recommended conditions. We're available for questions at the appropriate time.
Okay, Nathan, thanks very much. At this point, I will bring it back to the commission and ask for disclosures, and I'll start with Commissioner Hawkins.
What passed the project site?
None.
Commissioner Gower.
Commissioner Griffith, none.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower visited the site.
Commissioner Johnson visited the site.
Mr. Marshall, I used to shop there, but I've never sung there. No karaoke, ever.
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site.
Thank you very much. You sure, Commissioner Marshall? Seemed a little, you were wavering there. Okay. All right. So at this point, I am going to open up public comment on this item. I do have a number of public comment forms, and I appreciate everyone's patience in getting to this item. So I will open it up with the first one, Dean Pearson. Dean will be followed by Charles Wellington. And just a reminder, each person will have 3 minutes, just if everyone could be respectful of the speaker. And when you get up there, state your name for the record, and welcome.
My name's Dean Person. I'm a real estate broker and in the property management business. My company is Diversified Property Management. We've been in business for many years in the Reno area. I'm here tonight to represent the owner of the center, Stephen Nightingale, who obviously is not in favor of this. I have managed the center for the Nightingale family for almost 40 years. My office is upstairs over Williams First, so I look directly across the street at the old Scolari building. And the applicant obviously has tried various assorted uses for this building, and it's very difficult to find one that will take a 30,000 square foot building, or even half of it. He had an opportunity back when medical marijuana was approved, because it would make a perfect grow facility without an adverse impact on the neighborhood. However, that was not allowable under city code because it was too close to Anderson Grade School. Now what we're talking about here has a much greater impact on the community, which is intensely residential. And in looking over the plan, looking over the staff report, it quickly came to my mind that this was not a pizza parlor. This is another form of Dottie's, getting around some of the objections that Dottie's has created, and essentially that's my opinion as to what this is. I would very much appreciate your denial of this application. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Charles Wellington, and following Charles, Peter Krupp.
Good evening. Name's Charles Wellington. I'm a resident about 300 feet away at the Alamoana Apartments, and I'm representing those who are in Building E there. I realize that, and I can appreciate as an entrepreneur that they do want to bring something to that property. Thing is, for the last 4 years, I've been involved in security, besides the fact that I also live across the street. It's one of those things that 2.5 years of that security, I worked at Reno. It's one of those things where, with regards to the type of element that a nightclub and a bar brings, we're talking about, I've seen people, the beatings that have come in, when an element like this comes into a neighborhood. With this being residential, the gangs and the things that have used to have been here and that us as a community have tried to work with the police department and with our property managers to keep away from there, we've actually brought this place back. It used to be where people would actually cringe when you would say, oh, I live off of Moana and Lakeside. It's not really like that as much anymore, and we're really trying to keep it that way. About a block and a half away is a little kindergarten school. They talk about it being 24 hours. The residents around here are elderly. They work all hours. Being around this type of thing, you know, having seen the knife fights that have come in for gang territory when an element like this attracts the attention, is not something we really want in the neighborhood. It's also one of those things that being a 24-hour type of element, even being a nightclub, I've worked at, you know, GSR as well, and when people roll up, their subwoofers are booming. It's one of those culture things that everybody's trying to get into. The louder your car is, you know, you pregame before you go out to the club, whether that be a karaoke thing, you're going out with your friends, and you pull up, you got your subwoofers and your radio blasting, you're having a great old time, and that's gonna create a huge noise disturbance. And it's actually, depending on how bad it is, and if you've driven down Virginia at any time, and you're parked next to one of those people at a stoplight, it's been proven that those vibrations can cause palpitations. And we're talking about elderly people out there walking their dog at night, doing this type of thing, bringing crowds of young people from whether the colleges, if their business plan is good enough, they're gonna be bringing those people in. I appreciate the fact that they want to try and make this neighborhood better, and I really do. If their business plan is good enough that if this business is going to work and if this nightclub and karaoke thing will work, Let them take it to Virginia Street or downtown. Let them compete head-to-head with one of the other businesses that are trying to do this. But we are a residential neighborhood who is about family, about kids. The other way down the street on Moana is another school. I believe it's an elementary school. Let's try and keep this area just completely residential and bring back the goodness and wholesome that you guys are looking towards when we're talking about the future of Reno. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Peter Krupp, followed by Tim Kirk, please.
Hello, my name is Peter Krupp. You know, I've read this whole paper from top to bottom, all the way through. There's nothing in here about gambling, which kind of shocks me. To me, this is detrimental to the entire neighborhood. A school zone is approximately 75 feet away. 75 feet away. It doesn't make sense. I'm at a loss. Parking lot security. Everything on the board up here talks about for them. What about them? What about us? I am Peter Krupp. I own Swill Coffee and Wine. I'm stunned. This says nothing about helping out the businesses. This is about just them. How do you explain to the kids, you guys need to learn how to serpentine at 7 o'clock in the morning when someone leaves there that has been drinking all night long? So you want a child to run across the street? Okay, the neighborhood doesn't have a lot of money. We're trying to bring it back. I've seen a bunch of things. They showed the CVS pharmacy, which is up on 7th earlier. That looks 100 times better. Then they say they're gonna put paint on the building. Does the term putting lipstick on a pig mean anything? I am so dismayed right now that I'm sitting here looking at all of you back there. You have children. It's a school zone. It's 15 miles per hour. And you would want to put a nightclub, similar, like Tronics, Neutron, I can give you a list of all of them, that have been there and what they've caused. I'm just overwhelmed. I don't mean to be disrespectful. You guys do your jobs and I respect you and I thank you. But it doesn't make sense. Nothing up there talks about the people behind me. None of them. And it doesn't say anything about the children that are sitting back here. To me, we want to beautify the neighborhood, make it where we can show love and kindness. To make this neighborhood come back, we've worked so hard. Here's my landlord over here with his son, everyone. This means something to us. Don't discard this and then later turn around and say, well, we were trying to do what we thought was best. Think about your child. Drive in the street and see your child running across the street while somebody leaves at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're going to serpentine so they don't get hit by a car. And with me, they say they're going to secure their own parking lot. What about the neighborhood? Nothing here says anything about the neighborhood. I even asked, what about the gambling? Oh, there's no gambling. Now I hear tonight there's 9 machines. Please, please think about this. Think hard and think logically. It could be your child running across that street. Please.
Okay, thank you. Tim Kirk, followed by Aaron Walker.
Pardon me. One of the things that I noticed in the recommendations here, put together in the staff report, number 7, it says that the activities within the building shall be restricted to karaoke and/or single musician. No other live or recorded entertainment or dancing, nightclub, cabaret activities shall be allowed. This condition does not preclude periodic events licensed separately through special activity permit. Periodic can be every week. I know what the word periodic means. I hope you all do as well. And I hope that we have some more clarification as to what that means. I prepared some remarks because I can go on forever if you let me. So this project is located adjacent to a high-density residential area with most families living in apartment building with an extremely high concentration of children that is a stone's throw away from the school zone for Anderson Elementary. People driving through a school zone in the morning after a long night of drinking and gambling presents an unacceptable danger to the children and residents of the adjacent neighborhood. Let me say this. Somebody goes out and turns right onto Lakeside and hits a child, I and the people behind me will make sure that everybody who approved it gets put behind that wheel in public view. Many more of the, imagine someone attempting to open this type of nightclub adjacent to Collin Elementary or Roy Gom. Many of the more affluent citizens of Reno would respond strongly. The proposal would never even make it to the public hearing stage. The lives of children attending Anderson should not be regarded as having less worth because their families have lower incomes and on average, their school is more minority attended. A confetti-style nightclub will bring with it a type of crime that will affect nearby businesses. Area merchants, their customers, and employees will be vulnerable to that crime, especially as they walk to and from their vehicles. That includes people going to and from work all hours of the day over at the Pepper Mill. This area has more than enough gaming options to satisfy the needs of tourists and locals. This project will present an unnecessary risk to local businesses as well as employees and customers, and this project presents an unacceptable danger to children walking to and from elementary school. And for these reasons, I hope that you'll join area businesses and residents in opposing the project. One other thing, if I may. If this will work. Just to give you a visual of what we're talking about. Okay, it's not coming up. Well, basically, I have a picture of, oh, here we go. So here we go. Here is where this will be located. Here is the school zone. For those of you who don't understand where that is, this is a picture taken from the school zone, and there is the exit of the parking lot. Tom Brady could definitely throw a pass from there to there. One other thing, if you haven't passed by the school that we're talking about, this is the school. Notice what they have to notify people that it's a school zone. Then go by Roy Gom and see what they have. This is a disgrace. I don't think that these people should be treated as lesser because they don't make as much money.
Thank you, Tim. Aaron Walker, followed by Andrew Tapia. Sorry, I may have mixed that one up, gotten that one wrong.
Hi, Erin Walker, owner of Red Chair. I am, the back door of my business backs up to this proposed business. Initially hearing that Clockwork Pizza was interested in entering the neighborhood to do their small business, we were very excited. The pizza place sounds like a great idea. We have two pizza places within hundreds of feet of the current proposed site. That's not the issue. It's not a family affair that they're looking to propose. They're proposing gaming, drinking, 24 hours. I've been in business 14 years, this year, on Lakeside Drive. I've been in that shopping center for 6, and I work a lot of nights, and I'm very accustomed to calling the non-emergency Reno PD number because I hear and see things that a lot of people don't see. It's already a little bit sketchy at night, but the nice thing is when people are in the area, we know that they don't belong there. There are no other adjacent night businesses other than the 7-Eleven, which serves its purpose. And the owner of the building has had the building available with a sign for the duration of the 6 years that I've been there. I've had numerous people come in and say that they've called about bounce houses and roller derby and Sundance like movie theater festivals and things like that. And there's been no farmers market and there's been no calls back or interest. This is the first business in 6 years that I've been there that there's been any interest in bringing somebody in. And so there is a proposal of 12 more businesses or something of that nature to come in. Why is this the first one? Why are we talking about 24-hour nightlife and gaming and gambling? Security would obviously be a definite issue. across the street from this facility, there's Quest Adolescent Drug and Alcohol Abuse Counseling. There's another alcohol and abuse counseling. They also do marriage and family therapy. They have a government grant for future drug and alcohol abuse. There's the Anderson School. There's the adjacent businesses. We've done a lot to bring up the community. It's in better shape than it's ever been in, or I would say since the 70s. There's full occupancy, and it's all owner occupied. There's people who care. There's thriving businesses. We don't want to be downtown. We don't want to be midtown. Not to say there's anything about that we're derogatory towards. We're something different. We are trying to be respectable in the sense that people can come and feel safe. I already think that there's a traffic issue on Lakeside, and the speed limits are not being reserved. There's a lot of people who drive by, add alcohol to that. And yes, there is an adjacent school zone. That is a very big issue. I just don't think it's the neighborhood for that. I urge you not to approve the planning for this. I think with alterations to the plan, if they want to just do pizza, that's great. I don't think that a 24-hour facility will benefit the neighborhood in any positive fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew Tapia, followed by Barry Odea. Andrew's not here. Is Barry here?
I'm here.
Okay.
How's everybody doing? Okay, this is the deal. I
Can you
just
state your
bought a
name for the
commercial
record, please?
property.
State your name for the record.
Oh, Barry O'Day.
Thank you.
I just bought a property right where they're talking about. And I also just finishing up a re-renovation on it. And I just spent $1.8 million on this building. I'll tell you what, if I knew there was a bar going that close to me, I wouldn't have done it. But I'm already almost done with it now. So, you know, I don't live in the area, but I will conduct business in that area. And I cleaned it up really nice. I mean, I took a piece of junk and made it look good. And for all the people behind me, if I lived right there, I would definitely not want a bar right there. So all I have to say is I would have never done that if I would have known it. So I hope you guys deny it for sure. It's a bad thing right there. Okay, guys, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Aaron Klatt, followed by Gloria Wallner, please.
Hello, Commissioners. My name's Aaron Klatt, and my first comment is I just want to say that the applicant's presentation was less than 5 minutes. They were giving us 15 minutes to give us the full A to Z plan of what they want to do. I see Clockwork Pizza Loft. I didn't see a menu. I didn't see any passion. I didn't see anything in what they want to do. I see double doors for sound containment or for people not to be able to look in and see what's going on, one of the two. I don't know. It just seems like it was grossly under-researched on their end. I mean, 3 to 4 slides when before we were looking at, gosh, what was it? A pharmacy. I mean, obviously a little more, dedicated, but it just seems like this was kind of a run-of-the-mill and not necessarily researched with the community in mind. Let's say on the west side of the building, if they were to put it on, which is one of the things they say, obviously it's going to be 3,600 square feet of the 30,000 square foot. In their presentation, I didn't see what 3,600 square feet that was going to be, or how that was going to be laid out. If it's on the west side of the building, sure, that's a little bit farther from my apartments. I live in the Alamoana apartments myself. And so it's just, that just alone just really kind of bothers me that they have, seems like they have no idea really what they exactly want to do. They just want to get it pushed through. The second thing that I want to address here is the master plan land use designation of urban residential commercial in and of itself is land use synergy, promoting neighborhood character and sense of place. And a 24-hour bar, nightclub, even if it's just nightclub is because they have to say it because of what they want to put in it, that does the exact opposite of create that synergy for our community. And for our community that's frankly growing and becoming a better place. I probably am one of the youngest residents at the Alamo Apartments, and I like to kind of revel in the fact that I enjoy being a good role model for that community. And so I think a 24-hour bar, nightclub, pizza joint, whatever it may be, will lead to a lot of unintended consequences, a dangerous crowd, and frankly, I don't know, there's just a lot of space. Is it possible for me to use the PowerPoint that they had? Is this operational? Perfect. So if you look, 3,600 of 30,000 square feet, yeah, I'm sure the whole building itself will be locked off, but you guys said most of you visited the site, correct, commissioners? So frankly, there is tons of places, alleyways for the worst of all things that can come to our community to be done behind a corner or behind an alleyway. It is wrong for our community and wrong for our city. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gloria Wallner.
My name is Gloria Wallner, and I live in the Ala Moana Apartments, and mine is 300 feet from the building, my house. Already, without that there, I have every week, at least once every weekend, drunks walking outside my bedroom window, going down the street where that is. It's going to add more and more to those drunks and more of those awful loud cars. Our building is full of elderly people and children, and we don't need this kind of thing. It's a community there. It's not a place for a bar. It's not a place for people that want to party. Let them go. There's plenty of places in this town to party that are more appropriate areas than our homes are. And I just think it's a terrible thing to do to us, to our community. And I love the businesses that are already there because they're there during the daylight hours. They go home at 9 and 10 o'clock at night. They don't impact our neighborhood except in positive ways. But this kind of place is absolutely not right for our area, and I hope that you'll turn it down.
Okay, thank you. I have several more requests to speak, public comment forms. From what I can tell, they all say do not wish to make a statement, so I'm going to read through them. If I say anyone's name and you've changed your mind and you want to make a statement, feel free to come forward. Juanita Mitchell. The space may be zoned commercial, but a joint like this may not be appropriate for what is mostly a residential neighborhood with lots of young children and school-age children, grade schools, certainly not a 24-hour bar or a club. Michelle Bradford lives in the Ala Moana Apartments. It's a nice place to live. It's right next to the proposed bar. The neighborhood would go downhill for the bar to be allowed. Wayne Davis is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. Diane Anderson is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. Eric Pearson is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. Maya Lynn Adney is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. Zoe Menley Gilbert lived in this area for 3 years. This is a residential area, 24-hour nightclub at this location with a dangerous crowd in an already crime-stricken area. Is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. Andrew Tapia is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement. 24/7 nightclub is too close to the Ala Moana Apartments and its residents. I assume there will be a brightly lit sign, loud music at night, extra traffic, drugs, alcohol, is bound to spill into the parking lot and next to nearby parking lots. Please think of the families in that area. Rotrat Tapia is in opposition, does not wish to make a statement, opposed to a 24-hour nightclub. Just a few feet away is the school bus pickup and drop-offs for our students. We walk our little ones and don't need running in with the clientele that frequents this type of club. And Alicio Gonzalez Rojas is in opposition and does not wish to make a statement. Those are all of the request to speak public comment forms that I have. If anyone else wants to make a statement, please feel free to do so. Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission at this point for questions of staff or the applicant's representative or the applicant. Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess question for Nathan. Just as a point of clarification with respect to some of the questions that were raised, do we have a plan that you can put up there that indicates where in this 30,000 square feet building this is proposed to go? I see in the staff report both a plan of the space and an overall, but the two aren't marrying up for me here.
I have two graphics to illustrate. Unfortunately, I don't have a delineation of the area, but just to ballpark it roughly, we're talking about the far western portion of the building on the corner piece.
And would it extend?
Just roughly, I would say about, as this is represented, about that diameter.
So basically your pen.
It's about 50 by 60.
Okay.
In that corner.
So
hang on.
So based on what I'm seeing, the building is in the northwest corner of the building and extends roughly to, would that be the ridge line that I'm seeing there? As far as it would be extending back. So in other words, about, according to this, it would be the first 50 feet and then only extending back about half the distance of the building.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, he's asking a question of staff, so if, Commissioner Johnson, if you want a question of the applicant, we'll go there.
I think I got a nod of the head from Nathan.
That's correct.
So, thank you. I do want to, there's a number of other concerns that have been raised tonight, but I do need to make one, I guess, one question for clarification for staff before I get into some of those. When this was presented to the Neighborhood Advisory Board, there were a number of questions with respect to the overall site development, the lack of landscaping, everything else. It does tie in some degree to some of these other points that have been raised, but from what I'm seeing, there's not a requirement to update the site to basically some of the things that we've looked at elsewhere in terms of landscaping and requirements, modifications to the parking lot. One, is that correct, that that's not a requirement of this special use permit?
Nathan Gilbert for the record. That's not a specific condition as far as landscaping goes, although it is addressed in your staff report, a standard code provision which requires comprehensive landscaping when tenant improvements reach a certain threshold. The valuation of this building is quite low, so any tenant improvement over $80,000 over a two-year period is going to trigger comprehensive current code landscaping requirements.
Okay, so to the questions that were raised outside of this body at the Neighborhood Advisory Board, is it expected that any development within this even if it's 12% of the overall building, would trigger a site update for the property owner, whether it's the applicant or the property owner itself, that would involve parking lot landscaping, lighting, perimeter setbacks for the landscaping, all of those other code items would come in when they would be submitting based on the valuation?
It would be, that would be applicable to landscaping considerations.
Okay.
There are specific conditions of approval related to parking lot maintenance and lighting and the access to curb cuts, which wouldn't necessarily be addressed with the standard tenant improvement.
Okay. Thank you for that. Then to some of the points that, I guess, again, as was brought up on a previous project, there's certain things that are part of the special use permit. And I think the kicker here is that there's a special use permit for bar and nightclub with 24-hour operations. So I need a little clarification because in the adjacent shopping center just to the west, there is a restaurant with a bar, and I believe there's some gambling at the bar. I can't say that for certain, but I'm not sure. That is here already. Is the difference that that is not a nightclub and doesn't have 24-hour operation? Is the restaurant and bar use acceptable according to the zoning and this space that we have that we're looking at right now?
In the Moana West Shopping Center, which I believe didn't catch his last name, the first gentleman that spoke, Dean, there is a 24-hour bar that does have accessory gaming.
And that has a 24-hour use.
That's the Masters Lounge.
Hey,
Okay,
thank you. I'm just trying to get.
The
so I know that-
Masters Lounge
Thank
in
you.
the Moana West Shopping Center was grandfathered in,
Okay.
and
That has a bar. What's the distinction then, if we can clear this up, for the nightclub portion? Because it's bar and nightclub, and I believe there's a distinction in the code.
the nightclub portion, and this was triggered when the applicant submitted their business license application. Whenever you have live entertainment, including, the code is so broad, it literally cites magicians. I mean, it is any live entertainment more than twice a month requires, if you're doing it appropriately, a special use permit for live entertainment. That's called a nightclub.
Okay.
So what this request before you is for the nightclub. That's what the special use permit it triggers, specifically restricted to karaoke uses and a single entertainer.
Okay, so is it that particular use in addition to the 24 hours that we're looking at? Those are the two items that are triggering the special use permit.
Those
Because
are
a bar is allowed by right.
No. A bar, and let me draw the distinction here. We have
Okay.
two distinctions. We
Thank
have
you.
restaurant with alcohol. Swill Coffee is a restaurant with alcohol.
Okay.
They have a bar. Their special use permit was for a restaurant with alcohol. They also have food apparently, but what we're dealing with here is two components. They are a restaurant with alcohol, and that means that if they didn't come in for the special use permit for a bar use, they could still have a full bar behind the counter, but that you would need to have a full kitchen, and servers would need to bring that to you. The distinction here is with the bar is that they can sit down at the bar and order directly from a server.
Okay.
We have conditioned, and the applicant has proposed that they have food available 24 hours a day. A bar use in and of itself would not require that, but they are meeting that. So really the distinction here, given that they have food available during full operating hours, is that they have a component within their restaurant where patrons 21 and up can sit and order a drink directly. That's the bar use, and that requires a special use permit as well.
Okay, but a restaurant with alcohol,
Permitted by right for standard operating hours, 6 to 11.
6 to 11, okay.
No, we're at the point where the commission is asking questions of staff and the applicant. That's the order of the meeting this evening. Mr. Johnson, do you have other questions?
No, I think the biggest thing I was trying to get clarification on was what exactly the distinction is between what's being put in front of us and some of the existing uses that are there. Now, I guess you did bring up a good point. There is a bar in the Moana West Shopping Center that was grandfathered in. Can you explain if it's got 24-hour use, allowable by right, whether they're using it or not?
It was restricted, and when it came in 2012, it was the Masters Lounge. It did not, it apparently through oversight, was approved. It didn't require a special use permit at time of business license for the bar use, and it had unrestricted hours of operations. This recently came in for a change of ownership, where planning staff reviewed it and caught it. However, it's an existing business. We grandfathered that. They listed their hours of operation until 2 a.m., and so the determination was made that they could continue to be grandfathered, but their hours of operation now currently cease at 2 a.m. That was only due to a recent change of ownership.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan. I may have more questions, but I will let some other commissioners weigh in. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Claudia?
Patty Hansen, Planning Manager. I just want to clarify that there are 3 special use permits before you tonight. Last conversation was kind of going around in a circle there, but you do have the nightclub, the 24-hour operations, or the operations between 11 and 6, and the residential adjacency. So you do have those 3 issues before you tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Nathan real quick. This is the first time I've heard of 9 slot machines. Did you know about this? Was that in part of your staff? Had you been told this?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. The slot machines, accessory gaming is enabled by Nevada revised statutes. It is a privilege license that goes to council, but as far as zoning, that is allowed by right.
Okay, how about the residential adjacency? I went out there and physically measured it to the property line, and it's under 300 feet. Where do we go from here?
I'm sorry, I don't think I caught that. You said residential adjacency, you measured it? I didn't catch the
Yeah,
last part.
it's 300 feet still?
From the subject site, 375 from the suite.
Now, we talking from the corner there? Because I went out there and looked at the corner, and I looked where the apartments were at.
Correct,
Not-
that's
not
part
where
of the
they're-
special use
Not
permit.
where the west portion of the building is. To the east portion of the building, that's adjacent to
That's
everything.
correct, it's residential adjacency. Residential adjacency standards apply. That includes standard noise provisions, which after 10 o'clock, no use can achieve 45 decibels, which is a library. And during standard operating hours up until 10 PM, 65 decibels.
Last but not least, I don't see a police report in my package. That would be critical for the area we're talking about.
The Reno Police Department.
Critical.
Reno Police Department did review it and provided SEPTED comments.
Does that mean these citizens here have to deal with it on their own, or, how's that work? Do I go and call the chief tomorrow and say, hey, where was your comments on this package that we received about this restaurant? I mean, tonight's it. And I don't have anything on that area from the police department, and everything we always look at, there's something there on crime statistics and what they recommend for surveillance or cameras or whatever they want to do to keep everybody secure. It's not in my package.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Commissioners, Nathan, I have a question, and it's going to start out with kind of a statement. We've seen in other applications and presentations tonight, particularly the first one, if I might call them out, was a pretty comprehensive presentation from the applicant. We had a lot of information. We had a sound study. We had, on the CVS one, we had landscape plans. As commissioners, we have a set of findings that we have to make. And I'm speaking for myself, but I might be speaking for other commissioners as well when I say that it's easier to make the findings when we have more information at our fingertips, to be able to review. And my impression of this particular item, and I'm not saying anything, to your staff report was comprehensive, but the amount of information relative to landscape plans, to site plans, to floor plans, noise studies, police reports, fire reports, all the comments and information that we normally have in a staff report for special use permits wasn't included. So that's the statement portion. I guess my question to you is there a reason for this particular SUP that information isn't in here?
No, we'd be happy to provide the police SEPTED comments. That appears to be an oversight. Their comments and concerns were listed in the staff report. Their standard memo was not, but as indicated in the staff report, their recommendations were to have a security plan and to make sure that there were cameras surveying the scene. That was the extent of their comments, and we're happy to provide that for the commission further.
And I guess it wasn't just the police report, and I'm not, it's not an affront to the staff report. Again, I think the staff report is fine, the analysis is fine. It's the information that's supporting the staff report that we normally expect to see. It just seems to be missing, and I was underwhelmed with the amount of information for me as a commissioner to be able to make certain findings. And I guess my question again is it because that staff's comfort level with the information that was submitted by the applicant based on kind of what Commissioner Johnson was getting to, what's allowed by right versus what triggers the SUP, that information, because it's such a small deviation from what's allowed, is, you know where I'm going with this
I think I
question?
heard three items, and let me address them as I can recall them, if I may. Typical for when we do these nightclub special use permits, when they're limited to karaoke, we can think of the Point, Skirty's nightclub. The impacts are consistent with the house sound system of a jukebox, and typically conditions would reflect that. We have not in the past historically required sound studies when it's of that small scale nature. That may be something the commission would like to see, and we can certainly entertain that. But as far as the package, that's consistent with the scale of the operations requested. As far as landscaping goes, the nexus for one, to improve the entire site, we didn't see that was there as a condition of approval. However, as noted, the valuation of the center and standard code provisions, which trigger a comprehensive site with redevelopment, would inherently be occurring within the first tenant improvement.
And that's for the landscaping piece, that's something that the planning commission is normally, kind of involved in, at least reviewing. When I read through it initially, it didn't sound like it was triggering it, and then I got to the part where it said that it was being triggered, and then I was looking for the
We did
landscape
not feel
plan, and it
that there was
wasn't
a proportional nexus to condition it. However, code would require, it's included in your report for your information. We understand that was a preeminent NAB comment that was consistent with the NAB's concerns. We didn't see the proportionality in conditioning that. We wanted to inform you that based on the valuation of this, comprehensive landscaping would likely be required with the very first improvement. A landscape plan was not included other than what's there, because that's all that's required, and we're not further conditioning it.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. Commissioner Griffith?
Commissioner Griffith, I do have a question. I'm pretty familiar with the area, and I'm not familiar with Masters Lounge. Can you, for clarification, give me an idea of where that is located? I'm familiar with Lakeside Bar and Grill and Zozo's and also Swill, all of which close long before 2 a.m.
Isn't it by the laundromat?
No, it's by Joseph's. It
Oh, it's
faces
over by
Moana.
Joseph's.
It's located 200 feet from the existing apartments. It's located right here. It's immediately due south of the subject site.
Michelle, can you zoom in on that just a little bit?
So that's the same shopping center then as Joseph's, like Commissioner said. Okay.
And it faces towards Moana, correct?
The entrance faces towards Moana, but
Okay.
the suite itself is 200 feet from the apartments.
Okay. Commissioners, other questions? I'll start off discussion then by saying, just reiterating where I was going with the comment and the question to Nathan, that, as having a set of findings to make and, the information to make it, I was a little bit underwhelmed by what was in this particular package. And again, saying nothing about Nathan's staff report, but, you know, just the information, particularly looking at the NAB comments related to landscaping. There's a master plan, a policy called out P10 that relates to landscaping appropriate to related environment, and that relates directly to a finding that we have to make, finding B related to landscaping and conformance with the master plan, or not to landscaping, but conformance with the master plan. So I'm having a little trouble with that one, and I'm having a little bit of trouble with F, which relates to constituting a nuisance to area properties. That's where I'm at with things. I'd be curious to hear where others are at.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I think where I was trying to go with a bunch of the questions, and I would like to say I appreciate everybody being here and certainly expressing your views. It's very helpful to us. I will admit, I was at the NAB meeting and all the conversation there was about landscaping. What I heard tonight, and the reason I was trying to get it, is there are a number of other uses in this area that are similar to this, but there's a major distinction between them. They face Moana or they face Lakeside, which are the two primary streets in that area. So the access in and out of those, which again doesn't go past 2 a.m., is, although there is residential across Lakeside, it is set back and it's further away. What's before us tonight from a 24-hour use exits directly onto a very secondary neighborhood street that, while it does have commercial surrounding it, it also has residential, and it has a different feel to it than Moana and Lakeside. So when I look at the findings, I stop at the first one, with compatible with existing surrounding land uses and development. In the overall standpoint, looking at this zoning and this use and going to our master plan with the idea of these neighborhood centers, this is the perfect example of a neighborhood center. The issue with it is that this neighborhood center is currently focused outside of the neighborhood with its access. This would turn it inward and presents a use that I don't believe is compatible, mainly from the 24-hour standpoint. I can live with the aspect of the food service, the restaurant, the bar, even the limited gambling. Those items are there. It gets right down to that 24-hour access, and whether it's some of the issues that came to bear today with respect to timing come true, it is certainly a concern that something at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning is, I believe, disruptive to the existing land uses. So from that standpoint, I just stop on finding A, and that's where my struggle is at. So having said that, I would again appreciate any other comments, but just looking at it from the neighborhood standpoint, that's where I'm coming down at.
Commissioner Griffith.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Griffith, for the record, I'm very familiar with this area. I drive by the pedestrian and the school zones pretty much every single day. I'm there as early as 5:30 in the morning. There are children that are walking, so I'm in agreement with my fellow commissioner. I stop at A. I cannot find the 24-hour compatible use when we're that close to the children that are walking. And that's just from being there in the mornings, let alone how close you actually want to get for the school zones and things like that. But the senior housing and whatnot, driving by there pretty much every morning, you can see that it's a really highly used pedestrian traffic for both seniors and children. And I don't know, I can't really get past A. And then my other comment I wanted to make is I'm really familiar with the Ward 2 NAB, and I want to notice that they did comment a lot of the landscaping, but also the other people that commented from the NAB seemed to like the idea of the restaurant. I don't understand, or I have a perception problem with what it was they received as a presentation. It seems to me that they thought they were getting more of a pizza parlor. And so I don't know what their presentation looked like or not, but based on the comments that they made, they seemed very appreciative and looking forward to having a pizza parlor restaurant in the area. But what I saw tonight doesn't seem to be compatible with what they commented on and what I saw. So, thank
you. Commissioner Griffith, I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because when I read through the staff report, I kind of had the same impression of the use that was being there for part of the staff report and seeing the pizza parlor portion of it and thinking of that use and that space and, you know, living in Ward 2, not far from the site, I was, you know, pretty excited about that particular use there. But then all of the other things that are seeming to go with it really deviate from that pizza parlor concept. So having said that, you know, I really would like to see this site redeveloped. I think it is an eyesore in the community. It really needs something. And, you know, if it was a pizza parlor with hours that were compatible and supportive of the neighborhood, as Commissioner Johnson mentioned, with that neighborhood center concept, I think we'd be really on the right track of redeveloping a site that needs it. But yeah, with all the other pieces that go with it as proposed in this SUP, I'm struggling with the findings that I mentioned still, so. Other commissioners, Commissioner Johnson?
Just willing to make a motion.
Okay,
In the case of LDC 18-0005 Clockwork Pizza Loft, based upon the applicable findings, I move to deny the special use permit as I am unable to make finding A.
okay. Claudia, would you prefer the other findings, or is one sufficient?
One is fine unless you think that there are others that you also cannot make. So
I would agree with.
longer record is always better.
Yeah, more on the record, then I would agree with Commissioner Chair Gower's comment about finding F with respect to both noise as a nuisance to area properties, not from within, but from without the proposed activity with the 24-hour use.
Okay. Have a motion, do I have a second?
Can I interject really quick, Chairman?
Please.
Commissioner Griffith, for the record, based on what we were talking about for the speed in the area, the notations, and also for the school zone, I don't know if it would be appropriate to also note D, which is the traffic impacts and safety of the pedestrians in the area.
Okay. Is that part of your second? Okay. I have a motion and a second. For the record, Chair Gower, I can't make finding B, D, A, E, F. I think that's all of them. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of Commissioner Johnson's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed to it? No. Yes, we do have a appeal process, which I'm going to read into the record. Any final action not including recommendations or failure to take action by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor or a city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal together with fees must be filed with the city clerk within 10 calendar days, starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the clerk. And if the 10th calendar day falls on a weekend or holiday, when the clerk's office is not open, the appeal may be filed on the next business day. With that, appreciate everyone's input into this item. We're going to move on to our next item after a 10-minute recess.
I know. It's funny, I mean, I sat, the presentation, it was way different.
West of the Kitsky and Virginia Street intersection. It is on Redfield Parkway, and Coomley Lane kind of makes a transition there. Just to orient you a little bit, this is the site of the former Sports Authority and Circuit City going back many years in the two big box retail stores on the north side of the site. There's an Applebee's on the southeast corner, Starbucks and Aaron Brothers, and I think a haircut place as well. What we are asking for is an amendment to the master plan for the Convention Regional Center to change this parcel from general mixed use to tourist commercial. The tourist commercial areas are denoted in the kind of pink color on your screen. So this would fill in a little bit more of that tourist commercial area that's associated with the Convention Center to the north and the Convention Center, the big white building there to the east. This amendment does fulfill many of the master plan policies, both in the Convention Regional Center policies, as well as the overall citywide master planning policies. Just to highlight a couple here, CD 8 in the city's master plan policy really promoting non-restricted gaming uses in the Convention Regional Center specifically. There's also motivation to provide additional hotel rooms and other amenities surrounding the Convention Center, and that this would help to do as well. I do want to note, really, this change as far as the types of uses and the number of uses that would be allowed doesn't really change anything substantially. Really, there's two uses when you look at the land use table that are different between the general mixed use and the tourist commercial. Really, the main one is a hotel with non-restricted gaming. There is also, I think, with this change, upon the approval, we wouldn't be able to do like a rental facility or something like that. So those were really the only two uses that change with this. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Jeff, welcome back.
Good evening, Commissioners. Again, Jeff Borkhardt, Associate Planner for the record. I'll make it just as quick, if not quicker, than Andy. He covered pretty much everything. I did want to highlight that there's an interesting aspect of how we do regional centers with master plans. And so when we change a master plan, that directly translates into how zoning functions. So there will be land uses and development standards associated with this master plan amendment. But as Andy mentioned, there are a number of different master plan policies that this proposed amendment would support. And with that, we recommend that you approve the master plan amendment by resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
And there was a memo that was provided to you by our legal staff, and if our legal staff would like to go over that memo, feel free to.
This is in relation to some advice we gave last week with respect to master plan amendments.
On page 6 of your staff report for this project, there's a listing of considerations, some of them considerations by the Planning Commission, and some of them considerations by the City Council. Last week, we advised that the Planning Commission has to make specific recommendations on the considerations to be considered by the City Council. And we had provided you a motion that actually discussed the 3 specific considerations for the City Council and making a recommendation. We didn't have time to get back and catch this deal, and so what we've done is rather than have you specify in the motion your specific recommendation as to the City Council as to how they ought to view the considerations, we put it all in the resolution. And so if you decide that you would like to approve the master plan amendment, then we've given you a resolution, and all you have to do is pretty much what's already in the staff report. Just say, based on compliance with the considerations, you move to adopt the resolution, and all that discussion is in the resolution itself.
Okay, excellent. At this point, I will ask then for disclosures. Commissioner Olivas?
I visited the site, I spoke with the applicant's representative, and I forget if there were emails on this. If there were, I read them.
Commissioner Marshall, no disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson, no disclosures.
Commissioner Gower, I visited the site and spoke with the applicant's representative. I did not receive emails, I don't believe. If I did, I did not read them, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Griffith, for the record, I did meet with the representative's applicant or the applicant's representative, and I did visit the site.
Commissioner Hawkins visited the site, chatted with the applicant and his representative.
Commissioner Weisky, I spoke with the applicant's representative and I visited the site.
Okay. Open public comment. Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to the commission, and look for questions, discussion, or a motion.
Commissioner
Weisky.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, if there's no questions, I'll make a motion.
Can I
Go ahead.
delay us a little bit? And because this is kind of my first one of these, it seems to me the major difference of what's going on here, what I can understand, is basically the addition, maybe these are questions for the applicant, is the addition of a hotel with an unrestricted gaming associated with it. Is that?
No, sorry. Just to clarify my comments, really the hotel with non-restricted gaming is the only use that would be allowed that's different from what the current zoning and
Right,
master
so
plan
that's
designation.
what you're adding in.
That is, yeah, that would effectively be the one use that would be added. And then if that use were to come forward and be proposed, it would have to go through a special use permit process.
So are there other benefits that are, that come along with the, I want to get my tourist commercial designation? Is that what we're requesting
No,
a
I mean-
change in the convention regional center sub-designation from general mixed use to tourist commercial?
Sure.
That's what we're doing, right?
Correct. So yeah,
So-
there's really no, I mean, there's no difference between the two other than the one.
So why are you doing it?
In order to add flexibility to this site, should that become a use that they want to consider for this in the future. So this is an area, those two large retail establishments have been vacant. The Circuit City's been vacant for, I think, close to 15 years. The Sports Authority's been vacant now for a couple years and no future tenants in sight for that. So this is an area that needs to be redeveloped. There's ongoing properties and projects in the area that may consider this, and so this is adding flexibility.
So this is then really, in my mind, and maybe there's more to it than this, but really the central question for us is whether we want to expand the area within the city that's where unrestricted gaming is allowed.
Correct.
Is that kind of the key question that we
Yep.
should be grappling with?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Maybe this is a question for Jeff. There's a lot of other issues that are discussed within the staff report, but not, I didn't really get it didn't really educate me on what should I be considering and whether or not we should be expanding the land base within the city where gaming, unrestricted gaming could occur. Do we have policies associated with that? What's the direction that we have to guide us on that central question?
Sure. And there are existing policies that support gaming specifically around specific regional centers. So the Convention Regional Center to support development around the convention center. In our downtown Reno Regional Center, there's also policies with regards to our Redfield Regional Center.
Do we have policies that discourage gaming outside of those areas?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that discourages gaming outside of those areas. It only specifically talks about encouraging within those specific areas, concentrating them in those specific areas.
Do we, I mean, in the Reimagine Reno, are we seeking to expand or contract our land base that has this characteristics of allowing unrestricted gaming?
Claudia Hansen, Planning Manager. No, we're not. We are looking at maintaining the policy the way it's currently written and allowing for gaming in the Convention Regional Center.
So I guess the question is, what guides us on expansion of the CRC?
Well, there's the Convention Regional Center, but this is the sub-land use category of the tourist commercial within there. So this allows gaming. So in the purplish area, gaming, unrestricted gaming is already allowed. There's an existing special use permit on the parcel. Can you point to that, Jeff? Thank you. On that parcel, there's an existing special use permit for a gaming facility. This would allow for expansion of that special use permit or any other development of unrestricted gaming with a hotel on this area, in this area.
Maybe I can ask this another way. Why should we as a community expand our gaming opportunities if and maybe this is my orientation, we are, trying to diversify our economic base, et cetera, or I guess I would like to hear an argument of why we should be expanding the opportunities for gaming as opposed to maintaining I guess it's still available for other uses. It's just an additional it's an added use to what's already available.
Correct. As Mr. Durling mentioned, it allows for more flexibility on the site. We do have existing policy adopted by City Council that gaming is allowed in the Convention Regional Center to coexist with the Convention Center. So to provide more flexibility of development around the Convention Center, and this would allow for that flexibility to continue.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Weisky.
Thank you. Andy, can you jump back up there real quick? Yes. By adding the potential for gaming, it's simply a marketing tool for the current landowner to either sell or develop this piece of property one more way, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And it's his desire, it's his money to pay you and the city of Reno to go through this process to see if we, the Planning Commission, City Council, has an appetite to allow that possible use through a marketing tool to be sold off to somebody who may do it or may not do it because all the other uses are still in existence, right?
Correct.
Okay. Does that help? It's a marketing tool. There's a guy with some money that owns property and wants to divest his marketing ability. I think it's pretty simple.
Commissioner Marshall. Do I get a thumbs up for that? I guess there's another question that I'm wrestling with is, should we be expanding the land base for which gaming is potentially allowable? Or should, what are the guiding principles?
It's already, Commissioner Weisky, that corner piece out in front on South Virginia is owned by Stations Casino.
Yeah.
We have already approved gaming on that location. I do not remember if it's unlimited gaming or not, but I believe it may be without rooms because they hold the last license available to do so. This may be an opportunity for Stations to buy what's behind them or to the west and then add a hotel to it, or anybody else. But there's already gaming going out in front of it. We approved it, I don't know, a year and a half ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's there. You're
No,
not
I
stopping
realize that,
anything.
so
You're
that-
not changing anything.
Well, you could stop it if
Well,
you
sure,
chose
it's
not to
gotta come,
expand.
it's gotta come back before Planning Commission with an for an SUP anyways, no matter, I mean, if that were to be built there. So this is not an unknown customer.
No, I understand that. Well, maybe I'll interrupt our colloquy and allow planning manager, Madam Planning Manager.
So Andy may want to expand on this a little bit, but when the unrestricted gaming special use permit went before council a year or so ago, whenever it was, there was extensive discussion and concern that there were no hotel rooms. City council wanted a larger project. They wanted a hotel tower. They wanted a full hotel casino. And I don't think the site was adequate to hold that. So Ian, I don't know if you have more of the record from that discussion, but I do remember that was a concern by city council.
Sure. So I mean, the property, and Jeff pointed out that we're referring to, there's about 7.5 acres on the corner here that was approved for a special use permit that included about 20,000 square feet of gaming floor area, five movie screens, bowling alley, restaurants, but no hotel rooms. Like Commissioner Weisky said, it was associated with a former turf club license that did not require them to build hotel rooms. Quite frankly, the parcel itself is kind of restricted in size, and it was difficult to do that. So this definitely provides other opportunities. I don't want to say that it's necessarily specific to that existing one, but it definitely opens the door and provides another opportunity, as Commissioner Weisky said. I do want to just stress too, I mean, this is something that's encouraged. We have a suite of policies, both in the Convention Regional Center as well as in the city's master plan, that promote this type of development in conjunction with the Convention Center. There is a desire to have hotel rooms and amenities, including gaming, associated with the Convention Center to serve that tourist base. And the Convention Center, the RCVA has plans to expand the Convention Center, provide more events, and in doing that, there will be a market for additional amenities, including additional hotel with non-restricted gaming in this area. So this provides an ability to meet some of these policies in a more broad way. This guy?
Commissioner Marshall, yeah, so is there, and maybe I don't, the change in color, or where is the, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting all my names. What does CRC stand for again?
Convention Regional Center.
So what's the, is that defined on
All
that?
of this area that you see on the screen is in the Convention Regional Center.
So all the commercial that's south?
Correct.
Okay.
So everything that's in the cross-hatched is currently identified as general mixed use in the Convention Regional Center. The pink color is tourist commercial in the Convention Regional Center. There's, I think, 2 other land uses that are in the Convention Regional Center. It's rather large and goes north and south on Virginia Street. I think from Plum Lane down to or Milana Lane. I'm not sure the total boundary, but it's a rather large area.
Okay,
To
thank you.
McCarran, yeah.
Any other questions? Discussion? Commissioner Weisky, you were going to make a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the case of LDC 18-00002, Fire Creek Crossing Master Plan Amendment, based upon compliance with all the required conditions, I move to approve resolutions 5 through 17, adopting the proposed master plan amendment and recommending that City Council do the same.
Commissioner Weisky, just a clarification, and I'm looking at the memo from the city attorney. Instead of conditions, I believe they're considerations that we need to be looking at. So if I could just ask you to amend your motion accordingly.
Considerations, I apologize. Yes, considerations. I misread that.
So used to seeing. Thank the planning manager for catching that, not me.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I will second that, and as a part of the discussion, I think opening this up to allow for the hotel use was something that I had argued for during the last time this came before us. So seeing this finally closes the loop on what I couldn't vote for the last time. So I can second this as a improvement to the last time I saw this site.
Excellent. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously. With that, we will move out of our public hearing items to item number 8, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Just as a reminder to think about Lauren's discussion at the beginning of the meeting to fill out the survey for the regional plan update. And we have a meeting next week where we're looking at the regional transportation plan and the water plan. So we'll report back on those items after that meeting. Staff announcements.
Patty Hansen, Planning Manager. I don't have any past actions from City Council as you just met last week. But next week's City Council is a very, very full agenda. The 6 o'clock hearings will be a discussion on the adult business ordinance as well as the Sierra Senior Care discussion. So and that's just the 6 o'clock, and then we have a full agenda during the day as well.
So Claudia, can I ask a question on that? And I think I missed the meeting, or the adult business was on our agenda and then was pulled?
No, it
No?
it hasn't been on your agenda yet. We're still waiting for final direction from City Council,
Okay,
and then we'll
and then
bring
I'll
it
come
back to you.
back.
Correct.
Commissioner Johnson, can I follow along with Claudia one question? That the Sierra Senior Care, was that appealed? Was the decision appealed? Is that why it's
No.
going?
No, that goes automatically as a zone change.
Okay,
It's a
thank you.
PUD amendment.
Okay, we'll move on to item 10, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Commissioner Hawkins. Better get that one on the agenda here. Just wants a report. Do you want that report during the meeting, or are you just waiting for the report? Just one. Okay.
Can I make a suggestion for the October 4th agenda? Can we do it in the negative? No. Rehashing the
Do it in the negative?
Meridian 120s. Now, no, I don't want, can we
Oh,
say
okay.
where we don't want something to come?
Gotcha. Item 11, public comment. Seeing no one left to make a public comment, we will move on to item 12, adjournment. All right, all those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everyone.